Morning, thank you very much. Mr. Altman, morning.
Thank you.
Take the Bible in your right hand. Repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the
and nothing
truth.
but the truth. Is it good to sit down?
Please take a seat, Mr. Murphy, thank you.
Give us your full name, please, Mr. Murphy.
It's Derek Murphy.
And Mr. Murphy, you'll confirm that you've made two witness statements to the inquiry. INQ 000113, which is our reference, that was your Annex A statement dated the 21st of January this year. And a second statement, Annex B, dated the 6th of February, which is our inquiry. Reference INQ 000121. Chair, I'll ask for those to be adduced in full, please.
Indeed, thank you.
Mr. Murphy, let me just deal with a few general matters fairly speedily. You were employed at Brookhouse between the 25th of April 2016 and the 9th of November 2017. Is that right?
That sounds about right, yeah.
And before that, what had you done?
I worked about 20 years in the security industry.
And what attracted you to G4S working at Brookhouse?
Just change of job, a new challenge.
Yeah. And you went in as a DCO, did the training, presumably in the May of that year, 2016. Yes. We've asked others about training, so I'm not going to ask you. Are you able to confirm, and perhaps I'll put up on screen to help you, CJS 0073861, tab 23, Chair.
Thank you.
This is a letter that was sent to you by Michelle Fernandez, who was the HR advisor, dated 31st of July. Dear Derek, further to recent conversations, I'm writing to confirm your agreement to act up to the role of detainee custody manager whilst covering a DCM absence, and this will take effect from the 31st of July, after which you will return to your DCO duties. So from that point on, Mr. Murphy, is it correct that you were in effect a manager, a detainee custody manager?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure.
That's what the letter tends to
Yeah,
indicate.
that's what the letter's saying, yeah.
Isn't it? So, and did you remain in that role as far as you remember now, or did you return to DCO duties any time after?
I think I returned to DCO duties. I can't actually remember.
Can you remember how long you acted up as a DCM?
I think it was about a month, I think.
And did anybody support you for that role, or was it simply that you were identified as somebody who can act up as a DCM? Do you remember how it came about?
I think I was just identified, and another manager, another DCM, I shadowed him for a little while, and that was it.
Who did you shadow?
Dave Alders.
And as a matter of history, you'll remember, if needs be, I can show you the documents. That can go down. Thank you, Zainab. On the 25th of August, you received a precautionary suspension from duty. On the 12th of October of 2017, a final written warning based on comments made by you on the 14th of June. We'll come back to that. On the 15th of November, you may remember you received a letter terminating your employment with G4S, not least because the Home Office had suspended your accreditation. You appealed against the revocation of your certificates in November 2017, but you lost that appeal.
I didn't get an appeal. I was told there was no room for appeal.
Right. So whichever way it happened, you
I
wanted
didn't get
to
an
appeal. You
appeal.
didn't get
So
it.
I didn't lose an appeal. I didn't get an appeal.
All right. Tell us a little about your impression, please, of Brookhouse over the period that you were there. Was it an aggressive place?
It was a horrible place.
And horrible because?
Aggressive. It was It was horrible. It was smelly, aggressive. There was no backup from senior management. It's just the job I was told in the interview, and that wasn't the job that I was prepared for.
Yeah. And when you say it was horrible, are you simply talking about detainees, or are you also talking about your colleagues?
In general, it was horrible.
In general?
Yeah.
And you said it was smelly. What else about it was
It was just horrible. It was hell on earth, as far as I'm concerned. That's my way of explaining it. It was hell for the detainees, and it was hell for the officers that had to work there.
And you say you got no backup. Did you ever ask for backup?
It didn't take a blind man could have seen we needed backup there. We needed support.
Right, what kind of support?
And every sort of support. The DCMs did the best they could do. Senior management were hardly ever seen. It's just like we were up in our ivory tower, so just get on with it.
No. What about, in general terms, language? It's one of the things that you mentioned. Was bad language a commonplace
Yes,
by all?
yes,
So staff as well as detainees?
yes.
Would you have regarded it as abusive and derogatory on occasions?
Depends on. There's a lot of it. You had a lot of banter between. Me personally, I had a lot. I built up a very good relationship with a lot of the detainees, and we'd have a lot of banter. That's. I can only speak for myself.
Yeah. In your first witness statement, and if you want to look at it, by all means you can. At your paragraph 9, and by your first witness statement, I mean that being INQ 000113 for us. You said, because you were asked about culture and attitudes, and you said, I can't recall the attitudes towards detainees in detail, as I worked at Brookhouse over 4 years ago. It was an aggressive place to work, you've already said that. No one can consistently be surrounded by aggression and violence, often directed towards them, and be happy about it. I would say that this applies more so to the staff who were used all the time for CNR, whilst others didn't get used at all. This was unfair. First of all, just unpacking that a little, what was it that was always directed at staff?
Just a general abuse
By detainees?
by detainees. Yeah.
And did staff give as good as they got?
Some did. Yeah.
And the second issue that you seem to raise at the same time is that the same staff being used for CNR, while others didn't get used at all, is something we've heard already.
Yeah.
And it was unfair. Now tell us about that.
It was just every day I went into work. I needed to be on first response, because I remember at the beginning of my contract working there that I was told, I can't remember who told me that, if you're put on first response, or if you're asked to do a planned intervention or a CNO or whatever, and if you refuse to do it, that you're deemed unfit for duty and you could be sent home. And it just seemed to be the same officers were used all the time. There was officers there that were asked to do it and they refused, and they were still getting the same. They got the same training as myself and my colleagues. They were getting the same money, but we were the ones that were thrown in the deep end every day. But no one's seen when I used to go home at night to my family. I used to lock myself in a room and cry for about 2 or 3 hours over it. It was horrible.
So why did you carry on doing it?
Because I had no other choice. I was told if I didn't do it, I was deemed unfit for duty. And get on with it. You're a man. Get on with it.
You could have resigned.
Pardon?
You could have resigned. You could have left.
I couldn't afford to resign. I had a mortgage to pay. I had a family to support.
So you felt locked.
I had a family, but Brookhouse cost me my family and my home.
So you felt locked into a situation where you either put up or shut up.
Yes.
Now, did people refuse?
Yes.
And were they sent home?
No.
They weren't.
No.
So Why didn't you refuse?
I was told to man up.
By who do you remember telling you to
I
man
can't
up?
remember who told me to man up, but that was the culture there. Either put up or shut up.
Yeah.
And it was, you're a big man, and as you clearly pointed out in numerous occasions through this inquiry, you mentioned my name. Oh, he's a big guy. It's like you stereotyped me. I'm looking at you. You're a bald guy. Are you BMP? I could stereotype you like that. So you stereotype me as a big guy. Look, he's a big guy, and I just think that was a bit unfair. And that's the way I was portrayed. Not only me, I was portrayed in Brookhouse.
Well, that was the purpose of the question, Mr. Murphy.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
Whether you and people like you, like Jan Pashali, who we've actually seen in the flesh, were actually being used unfairly because of your size. That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
It's not stereotyping you. I'm asking a question which is relevant.
You brought it to point
Yes,
nearly every day in the inquiry to other people.
Yes, for that reason, because it's relevant to understand that if you and people like you say that you were used unfairly, the question is why? And the question is whether your size had something to do with it.
Yeah.
And do you think it did?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Right.
I do indeed, sorry.
So, who else do you remember being used unfairly to do CNR? Jan Pashali complains about it. Who else?
There was a load of us. I can't remember the names offhand. There was a good few of us that used. It was guys who used to use the gym. It just wasn't right. But we put up with it. It was put up or shut up. And the fact that every day every time I put on a kit, I'd be feeling sick. I'd be shaking. It was horrible. And even afterwards, you go. I want to go outside have a bit of fresh air. Go and get your reports done first. There was no support from the management at all. It was disgusting. But we were only paid from the shoulders down. That's as far as I was concerned.
Can you just repeat what you said? You were only what from the shoulders down?
We were paid from the shoulders down. That's all they were interested in.
So in other words, they wanted you for your brawn, not your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was the point I was trying to make earlier.
There's no managers round when I used to sit in a room with guys and they'd be crying because they'd feel lost. Some of the detainees in there, they were locked in with rapists, murderers, hardened criminals, and these poor guys were there and they could have been doctors or something, and they were trying to make a living and they were locked in there. It was disgraceful. They should never have been let. They were in a prison. That's all they were in. It was disgusting. Sorry, I didn't mean to rant on.
No, you say what you want, Mr. Murphy, and if it's not relevant, I will ask you to move on. What about racist attitudes? Were you aware of any racist attitudes by staff towards detainees?
No, I was not.
No. You knew John Connolly, presumably.
John Connolly was a CNR instructor and he was an officer as well.
Yeah. Did you watch Panorama?
I did.
And you must have heard him referring to D275, who was protesting on netting on the 17th of May, or advising Callum Tully to refer to him using the N-word.
Yes.
Did you remember hearing that on TV?
I do indeed, yes.
And what did you think of that?
I didn't think it was very distasteful.
You thought it was, or you didn't think?
I did.
Did it surprise you?
Yeah, I never heard John Connolly saying none of that before.
No. Had you heard anybody using any kind of racist terminology at all?
No.
No? Did you watch the evidence of Dan Small?
Yes, I did.
And he certainly has referred or said certain things which were, at the very least, unfortunate on this topic.
I never had much dealings with Dan Small, so I can't comment on anything he said.
Apart from the aggression, and I think, were you saying there was also violence directed at staff?
Yes.
You say it was a horrible place to work.
Yeah.
What were your principal concerns, do you think, about Brookhouse?
Safety of detainees and staff.
Yeah. And was that managed appropriately, do you think, or not?
Well, the officers were dealt with it and managed it. They had to manage it with the tools they were given. They were doing the best to their ability.
And did the issue of staffing play its part?
Absolutely.
Understaffed?
Yes.
All the time?
Most of the time I was there, we were understaffed, yeah. At night shift, you might have 2 officers, 3 officers looking after 4 or 5 wings.
Which was insufficient.
Absolutely, yeah.
In your first witness statement, and perhaps we don't need to go to it, but if you'd like to, I can give you the paragraph numbers. From 57 to 60, you are asked about use of force, and you say that probably you were used daily.
Yeah.
I can see you're turning it over, so let's just have a quick look. I was probably used every day for use of force. You couldn't comment on all of them. You didn't recall reviews of the incidents or any lessons learned from them? Any debriefs that you remember afterwards to understand from your seniors what was done well, what was done badly, and lessons to be learned?
It was just a quick brief and get back to work.
Yeah. You say at 58, I don't recall having any concerns about any incidents at Brookhouse. If I had concerns, I would have raised them at the time. And you did raise, you say, the fact that I was used for CNR all the time.
Yeah.
You say at 59 that your opinion of control and restraint techniques is when used properly, they're very effective and safe to control an individual's behaviour. I don't feel that CNR was used excessively at Brookhouse. It was that aggressive that it had to be used daily. Detainees would fight, self-harm, and refuse instructions every day. And you say at paragraph 60, I didn't see any alternatives to CNR techniques used at Brookhouse. The only way to avoid using force of detainees is to allow them to have what they want. 99% of the time that use of force is used is because detainees are refusing to follow the rules of the centre or fighting each other. So simply changing the rules would be a solution. Ask the detainees what they think, have work groups to discuss and come up with new rules. After all, it's they who must live in the centre. Why not make them part of the decision process? This would stop the need for use of force.
Yeah.
Do you think that's realistic?
It'll never happen, I don't think, because
That's
I'll
not
give
the
you an
question.
example. There was like a protest where about 100 detainees were remaining in an exercise yard at lockup, and I asked the managers could I go out, and we went out first. A few of us went out first because, as I say, I had a rapport with a lot of the detainees, a good rapport with them, and there was a detainee. D275. He was one of the main instigators of it. So myself and a colleague went and we spoke to him. I said, sit down. What do you want? And we were gaining progress. They were saying what they wanted. We were listening to them. They only wanted to be listened to. And then we were told, all officers off the yard. As soon as we left the yard, kicked off. And then there was a guy having some sort of a seizure. And we were told not to go out to the yard. So I asked a couple of officers, guys, listen, we need to get the guy off the yard. He's going to die. And I said, is there anybody going to come with me? And lucky enough, a few officers said, yeah. And I I broke the rules, and I went and got the gentleman off the yard. And he went to hospital.
Yeah. So what are you saying, that if you were allowed to have had engagement,
Yes,
then
absolutely.
that would assist?
They were frustrated. There was
Yeah.
guys that were there and they didn't want to be there. They wanted to go home.
Yeah.
That's all. You know yourself, when you're frustrated, you want someone to listen to you. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's a luxury we don't all get, Mr.
Yeah,
Murphy.
of
but
course.
anyway. In paragraph 85, while I'm on it, you were asked for suggestions for improvements. And I'd like to ask you about this because that was perhaps a summary of your views, having been there, of what might help. And you said Brookhouse could be improved by having more staff, not using the same staff for use of force, and giving staff their breaks. So was that another source of frustration, that staff didn't get the breaks which they were entitled to?
Yes. On a daily basis, yes.
Detainees with mental health issues should not be in detention. as it's not suitable for their needs and makes them worse.
Yeah.
And that's a bigger issue, some evidence about which was heard yesterday. Detainees should be allowed to be part of the decision-making process that affects their life within the centre. And they should be allowed to sit in with senior managers on meetings to input on decisions that affect life at Brookhouse. So that is a paragraph you wrote, Mr. Murphy, in answer to the question, how might you improve this place?
Yeah.
And do you stand by what you said
yeah.
in that statement? And do you think any or all of that is realistic? Not whether it's likely to happen, but do you think if some or all of that was put in place, it would change the culture and change the experience, if you like, of everybody, staff as well as detainees, at a place like Brookhouse?
Yes. Because at least they'll have a voice.
Now, can we together, Mr. Murphy, look at a few things that you have been recorded as saying, and I want to ask you about them. And I'm going to put up on screen to help everybody some transcripts from the footage that Mr. Callum Tully recorded when he was working in Brookhouse. And the first chair is going to be Zainab, if you can kindly put up, please, TRN 0000095. And for you, Chair, this is a tab 51.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, I think you do have copies of these if you want
He
to
do.
refer to the
No.
hard
He does, Chair, but I've suggested it's simpler if he refers to what's on screen
Indeed, if you're happy with that.
rather
you
than
very much,
manipulate heavy bundles in front of him.
Thank you.
And if we go to page 59, right, this was, just to put it in context, a conversation on the 13th of May, as we can see from the date at the top. And if we go to the bottom half of this page, we see Callum Tully at line 2107. Talking, there's a detainee there. I thought you were messing around. It won't be before you know it. You'll be back on association. You'll be able to go and get your crisps. Did you smoke something? And he say, I smoked nothing. And then Callum Tully repeats, you don't smoke anything, fair enough. And then you say, Mr. Murphy, is this one of the Spice Boys, is it? This is the third one today. And the detainee responds, not Spice, not Spice, I'm not a Spice Boy. Tell him, do not call me a Spice Boy, please. And then there is more conversation about that at line 2120, I'm not a Spice Boy. And Tully says he's only messing around, I'll tell him though. Sorry, we're going to take your blood pressure, says a nurse. I'm not a Spice Boy, I've got an illness. Now, you mentioned earlier, I mean, this is not bad language, you mentioned earlier about banter. Why were you calling him a Spice Boy? Was it a joke, or...?
From my recollection, there was a certain band of... there was a group of detainees who were well known for having spice and being the effects of spice, and we've been called to emergency or a medical response with them.
Yeah.
And just the name Spice Boys came into just... There's no... It wasn't meant as a derogatory thing. It was just they were the Spice Boys. They were well known for it.
So what, there were a group of detainees who were using spice?
Yeah.
And you say they were referred to the Spice Boys. You're asking, is this one of them? But you can see this man's reaction. Tell him not to call me a Spice Boy, and at the bottom I'm ill. Now, what was it possible, Mr. Murphy, that you and others rather forgot that fact that some of these individuals were themselves not well, and even if they were taking spice, didn't detract from the fact that they were vulnerable?
I wasn't trained in any way, shape or form, medically or mentally, so I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. And a question I've asked others, I'll ask you, were you able to distinguish in all the time you worked there between somebody who was genuinely unwell and somebody who was perhaps like this
No.
man might have been thought to be genuinely just a drug user or a manipulator or a disruptor? Were you
I
able to
wasn't
distinguish?
trained medically or for mental awareness, so no.
We go to another. We go to another transcript, please. TRN 0000091 at page 13. And this is the 10th of June. Chair, tab 59 for you.
Thank you.
With Callum Tully, I was quite enjoying my game of pool until he comes along. And there's somebody called Angela O'Connor present, and then you say, he's a fucking pile of shit and misery, so he is. And the conversation continues until the bottom line, fucking grotty cunt down the bottom. When Tully says, oh, Mr. What's-his-name is having a shower, isn't he? So that's a reference to a detainee. Tell us about the language you used, Mr. Murphy.
I
Why
don't
do you
remember
think...
this conversation at all.
No, I'm sure you can't, because there would have been many. But do you
But
think...
I don't remember this conversation. You asked me about this.
I'm asking
So I'm
you...
just saying to you, I don't remember this conversation.
No, I'm sure, but if the transcript is accurate, and you're referring, for example, to a detainee as a fucking grotty cunt down the bottom, do you think that was appropriate and professional?
I don't remember this conversation, so I can't say whether it's not appropriate language if it was used, and I don't remember using it.
If we go to another transcript, please, tab 62, Chair, TRN 0000084, at page 11. This is the 20th of June. Just another example, Mr. Murphy. Right at the top, it's with that tosser, and that refers to a detainee D728, or whatever the fuck. And you're having a conversation with Nathan Harris, talking about D728 again, the use of the word tosser. Appropriate?
I don't remember this conversation, but if it was used, it is very inappropriate, yes.
Yep.
There's some language I use there I'm in no way proud of. In fact, I'm ashamed of, but I don't remember this, and if I use it, it's very inappropriate.
Was that kind of language, whether by you or by others, ever challenged by anybody, or did it become such a commonplace that you almost did it
I never heard
automatically?
anybody using this sort of language, so I can't comment on that.
So you never heard anybody else
I
using
can't recall hearing anybody else using language of that, so I can't comment on it.
No, but you're not saying nobody did, surely.
I don't recall anybody saying using that sort of language, so I can't comment on it.
Well, you're not saying it was just you alone, are you, Mr. Murphy?
I just answered the question for you.
So you're just not prepared to help?
I am prepared. I'm just saying I don't recall it.
You don't recall it? And all
No.
the time you were there, you don't recall anybody using bad language?
You people use bad language, but I don't. This sort of language, people use bad language all the time, but it's very inappropriate.
Yeah. So because you can't remember it, you can't remember whether anybody was ever challenged about it, or whether you were challenged about it, or whether you challenged others about it?
I can't remember.
No.
It's such a long time ago.
Let me ask you something, please, about from Dan Small's account to the inquiry, and it deals with an incident that took place, according to him, on the 13th of March. And if we go to tab 37, Chair, to begin with, CPS 000024 at page 5. And these are notes from the BBC recordings. And if we look on page 5, you can just make out towards the bottom as it sits on screen on the 14th of March 2017. Have you got that, Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
DCO Dan Small told our main source that he was attacked by a small Afghan detainee care and segregation unit on the 13th, so this relates to the 13th of March, and that DCO Derek Murphy responded by, in inverted commas, choke slamming him. This is a technique where you pull someone into a chokehold against your other arm. It's not an authorised technique. DCO Small said DCO Murphy was squeezing so hard that DCO Murphy's face went bright red. Small said both he and Murphy then restrained the detainee using approved techniques outside the office because there were CCTV cameras. Do you recognise that incident?
No. I definitely... what is a chokehold?
Well, you tell me.
I'm asking you. If I knew, I would be asking you.
I'm not here to answer your questions,
Okay.
Mr. Murphy, I'm
I
afraid.
don't know.
You don't know. That's what he said to, clearly, Callum Tully, who passed it on to the BBC, and that's why it's noted here. And then, if we look at what Dan Small said in a statement he made to the inquiry on the 10th of February, which is in behind tab 38, it's BDP 000003 at page 15. Paragraph 44. Can we just expand that, please? I accept that document CPS 000024, page 5, which is what I've just shown you, accurately describes a conversation I had with Tully regarding an incident in which I was attacked by a detained person and was assisted by DCO Murphy. I note that the account I gave to DCO Tully was embellished for dramatic effect as I was telling a story, and didn't record the incident entirely accurately. To the best of my recollection, I was put in a chokehold from behind by a detainee and pressed my red button for assistance. DCO Murphy attended along with a manager. The detainee let me go and we escorted him to his room, where he was already on segregation. On entry into the room, he went for me again, and DCO Murphy took him to the ground. I don't recall the exact hold he used on the detainee, but it may have been a chokehold. The manager was present. To the best of my recollection, no one spoke to me about this incident again. Coming home to you at all, or not?
No.
You're not saying he's lying about it, are you?
I don't recall. I'm
You
not
just
saying
don't
anything
recall
about
it. So it means nothing to you. You can't say one way or the other whether he was
I wouldn't have
accurate.
used a chokehold or whatever that is. So I can't. I can't comment on it because I can't remember it happening.
Okay. Let's look at something else then, please. Another transcript, this time for the 13th of May, TRN 000095. We've been to that transcript already behind tab 51. This time at page 32. And so the date is the 13th of May. We looked at this transcript a little earlier, Mr. Murphy, for a different reason. But here Dan Small is having a chat with Dan Lake. And Small says, literally, he keep hurting. And Dan Lake says, on B-wing, that geezer bit his hand. Do you remember, they wrapped up in the office. The geezer bit Derek's hand. And then he bent over and Derek uppercutted him and cracked him straight in the jaw. And afterwards, Jules come up. He was like, what happened to his lip? His lip was all over the place, nice, and Derek was like, I don't know. I saw everything. He was undoubted. Derek just went smack. Oh dear, just to make sure. I'll be back. Small, have you told Dan, or is he still broken? Now, was there ever a time, Mr. Murphy, when you uppercutted a detainee to the jaw, splitting his lip?
No. I would have tried to release my hand if he was biting my hand.
Yeah. So, on the face of this transcript, this is a complete fiction.
Absolutely.
Let's look at something else, please.
How do we know it's not embellished again for the benefit of Callum Tully, like the last one?
Let's look at something else, please. It's a transcript which should be dated the 8th of May. Confusingly, it's dated the 13th of August. It is TRN 0000024, Chair tab 49, page 3. At the top, we've got you saying, did you hear something's missed last week? That fucking arsehole. So there's a bit more language. Whoever male officer 1 is saying, yeah. And then you say he had papers thrown all over his room and everything. And I went into his room, continues at line 46. I said, oi, get the fuck out of bed. Clean this shit up. You ain't going nowhere until you clean this up, you little prick. And I said, if you don't clean it up within the hour, I'm going to come and smash the fucking shit out of you, and you ain't doing no flying. So I left him and walked out. He's still in fucking bed. Something's missed, threw it at him. Got the quilt off him and threw it. Get the fuck out. Okay. Clean all of this in a nice bundle. Oh, hang on a minute. Got my bags and put it in a fucking bag before you go. He did. Now, these aren't Dan Small's words, and they're not Dan Lake's. These are yours. Did that represent the truth of something you had done in relation to a detainee, Mr. Murphy?
I can't recall.
You can't recall this either, no?
It's a long time ago, yeah.
I get that, but there are certain things in life that we all recall doing, things we're embarrassed by, ashamed by, things we know we ought not to have done.
Different lives, haven't we?
Sorry, Mr. Murphy?
Me and you have had 2 different lives, so
I'm not talking about
I've
me.
had a lot of trauma in my life. Obviously, you haven't, so I can't remember things that I remember. I can't remember this. If I remember that, I'd comment on it.
So you can't remember this. Your life experience is such that you're unable to help.
I can help, but I can't remember this.
Do you agree on any showing? Let's just assume, if you be prepared to come with me this far, let's assume you said all of this, and let's assume it was the truth. Calling somebody a detainee a little prick is not the right thing to do, is it, Mr. Murphy?
I didn't think we were hearing assumptions in your own words. We're hearing evidence, aren't we?
I'm just asking for
your
your.
If it was said, it's very inappropriate. Yes, I agree.
That's all I'm asking you. And if you said to this detainee, I'm going to come and smash the fucking shit out of you, that's a threat, isn't it?
It sounds like a threat, yeah.
Yeah. And it's, looking back now, if you said it, and it's a big if, according to you, if you said it in truth, in other words, not saying the words, but if you said this to a detainee, then it's off the pitch, isn't it? It's nothing you should have said to a detainee, is it?
Absolutely. I did say it before because it was on the panorama programme, but I was facing Callum Tully while I said it.
You're talking about something else now.
Yeah.
What have you?
Because I see where you're leading. This is going to lead on to another transcript that was seen on the programme, where I did turn around to Callum Tully, and he has it on film, where I turned around and I said, if he does that again, I'd smash the fucking shit out of him. Excuse my language.
That's all right.
You speak freely.
Yeah. And what are you saying about this other instance?
I don't remember this, and I if I said it, it's totally out of context. It's totally wrong. I shouldn't have said it. I'm ashamed I said it. If I didn't say it, where I was saying on film saying it, I'm ashamed of that as well. It's totally unprofessional. It shouldn't have been said.
I want to please with you look also at some conversation that took place between you and Callum Tully and Jan Pashali in particular on the 9th of May. And for you, Chair, it's tab 50.
Thank you.
And it's TRN 0000077. And we start at page 5. Now, here, Mr. Murphy, the conversation seems to be around a detainee ciphered as D87. And Tully says, is this D87? Is this D87 on C, on the second floor of C? Pashali, yeah. And the conversation continues around him. Unhappily, there are no line numbers here. But if you look about a third of the way down, you'll see Tully says he's just big, isn't he? In fact, just after another officer, male officer one, says he's a bellend. He's just big, isn't he? And Pashali then says, could get a couple of reserves, not because we won't get him out, but we'll be blowing for something and going all the way. And you're there, say yes. You say yeah. Where's he going, says Tully. Is he going CSU? Pashali, I don't know. You say, if it's a question of being prepared, get them Oscar 1 to come down here and just say to him, we need a couple of reserves, but if he's a big one and there's a fight, the male officer 1 says, I'll be very surprised if he walked, I'll tell you that. Pashali will get him out 100%. You say, yeah, but we'll be blowing if we have a 10-minute run-in. And you say, yeah, and Pashali says, the thing is, we'll have softened him up. So then he'll be knackered as well. Now, tell me if I've understood this correctly. What you were talking about is a control and restraint that was expected to be executed in respect of D87, who was a big man. Yeah.
It sounds like it, yeah.
Yep. And when the word reserves is used, getting reserves, what does that mean to you?
I presume it's another team.
And when Pashali uses the word blowing, for example, we will be blowing if we have a 10-minute run-in, what did you understand he meant by that?
I don't know.
Does he meant being knackered or exhausted?
I
Puffing?
don't know. I presume so. I don't know. I can't comment on what Mr. Pachali meant by it, but
Can you understand what he meant by we'll have softened him up? So he'll be knackered as well. What?
I don't understand.
How would you soften up a detainee?
I don't know.
And then on page 40 of the same transcript, 40, although this conversation has moved on and some time has moved on, at the top you can see male officer 1, are you taking the big guy and all the others? Tully, D87, Matty doesn't want to. Bipolar guy, who was Matty? Any idea?
No.
No?
Matty.
And then Tully talks about the black guy in room 3, and the conversation continues that way until, let's say, about halfway down, just to save a bit of time. If we can scroll up, please. Can you see Jan Pashali says, I can't play chess with you all day?
Yeah.
You got that?
I see
Can't-
that, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I can't play chess with you all day. He would follow me to the toilets. I went one day, I went down there, he went, where are you going? I say, I'm going for a fucking piss. And one of the detainees says, do you want to hold it for him, honestly? And then a phone rings. Jan Pashali is speaking. It's not something's missed, is it? Fuck's sake. And then you say, I said to him, mate, you're doing my fucking head in, mate. You give me a fucking headache listening to you. He just wants you to be fucking, and although the word is transcribed as available. It was almost certainly afraid of you. So it should read, he just wants you to fucking be afraid of you, you know? Tully, who? And you say, she said to me, are you afraid of him? Do you remember him saying that? And Tully says, I wouldn't fancy having a fight with him, though, I've got to say. And Pashali says, it's fair enough. And he says, well, with you lot in here, I'd be all right, wouldn't I? And Pashali says, I'd love to get in the ring with him, put the gloves on, and see what he's fucking made of. I would love to. He's got shoulders, his chest is, and this is how it reads, titty. He's got a gut. His arms ain't at all that. He's just got some shoulders and a bit of height. Fucking crack him straight in the ribs, and you say straight in the solar. Now, do you remember what you were talking about there?
No, sounds like a boxing match.
It certainly does, but it sounds like a boxing match with a detainee who happened to be big.
It didn't say anything about a detainee there.
So you don't think it's got anything to do with that at all?
I didn't say that. I said it doesn't appear to be talking to a detainee there. They're talking among ourselves there by the looks of things.
Right, and then you say I'd hose him. What did you mean by I'd hose him?
I don't know.
And
It's not a term I've ever said. I don't know.
And I draw it. When I was away to a friend's pub one night, this is you, it was an open night, I was there as a guest, got any fucking something's missed or that, I think I told you this geezer, Pashali says, yeah, you did tell me, did you drop the cunt? Yeah, well, his feet were fast and he done my nose. Yeah, that's how he ruined your shirt. Right, between right there he was, that was it. Who was that? Says Tully, and you say, so I said to him, fucking did him, I tell you. Who was that? And you say, I don't know who he was, some fucking idiot thought he was fucking Bruce Lee. Now, did you remember the incident you're talking about?
No.
Where you, somebody struck you in a pub, and you did him?
No.
No? Doesn't mean
It was
anything.
probably another story that was told because Callum Tully was always asking about this and asking about that. He used to come up to me and say, oh, Del, I need to get involved with more CNRs. Everyone thinks, excuse my language of this, everyone here thinks I'm a pussy. And I did turn around to him and I said to him, you do not have to prove yourself to anybody in here. But he was always fishing for information, always asking ridiculous questions. And I used to tell him a load of stuff. Maybe I shouldn't have, because he was young. I used to tell him some outrageous stories, and he seemed to believe them. And he seemed to get off on it. He seemed to be enjoying it.
So these were just tall tales, were they?
More than likely, yeah.
More than
'Cause I
likely.
don't remember any of that, because I'm sure I would remember something like that.
Yeah. Well,
And then if it happened in a pub, it has nothing to do with Brookhouse, is it?
but that's not the point, Mr. Murphy. I'm asking you about something that you said in Callum Tully's presence, and whether
I can't say, I can't remember the conversation, but
And
there was
whether-
many have said that because Callum liked to hear a story, and
Yeah.
I give him loads of them.
you see on the surface, it sounds like you and Pashali, because I'm going to continue reading on, is about glorifying violence. That's what it sounds
No,
like.
not at all.
No?
It's about feeding Callum Tully, excuse my language again, bullshit, because
Right.
he seemed to, that's what he seemed to want.
Yeah. So he wanted bullshit and you fed him.
Absolutely,
Yes,
yeah.
Right. Because Pashali continues, that happened to me once as well. I think I told you this story before. My sister had a bit of a car collision somewhere. They were trying to mug her off, and he goes through that account. And if we drop down to the next response he gives in the centre of the page. So anyway, I opened the door, took the piece of paper with my sister's mobile number on it, put it in the fucking pocket, shut the door, and went, you must think I'm a fucking mugmate. So I come round to him and he's gone, what? I said, you fucking heard, you prick. Showing a damaged front, I'm going to fucking smash your face in. He jugged me straight in the face, just went ping. I've gone, you cunt. Fucking split my lip. And then he went, oh. Turned around and ran. Fucking ran up the road after him. This is in broad daylight. Kicked him to the floor. And fucking boxing him, kicking him, punching shit out of him. My mate was in the car with the missus. And you said, AA, what you doing? And on it goes, says Pashali, anyway, well, my missus come round and jumped in the car, drive, she was going, I'm covered in claret, mate. My fucking hands, I had white trainers on, got home, took all my kit off. It's like I committed a murder, I didn't, but binned it all. So do we understand that the two of you were just exchanging tall stories made up independently of each other for Callum Tully's benefit?
Well, I know I did. I can't speak for Mr. Pachali, but yeah, I did on numerous occasions.
Let's go to the next page, please, Mr. Murphy. About halfway down, you see Callum Tully saying, "Thing is, though, Jan." That's it. "Thing is, though, Jan, you're used to fighting people like D87, so there's no question that in Callum Tully's mind, at least, this was all discussion based upon D87 because of his size, because that's where the conversation began, whether you say you recall it or not. And he says, because you was in prison, I fucking wasn't, mate. And then Pashali said this: "I never learned how to fight in prison. I only done 8 years in prison service. I grew up in..." And then Tully says, "MMA, aren't you into?" Pashali says, "No, see the stories, look, see MMA." And you say, "What was that?" And Pashali said, he said, "I was into MMA. Everyone's got a thing about MMA at the moment." You say, "See, this is what I was saying to you." And Tully says, "Fucking putting people in sleep holds." Says Pashali, "Oh, I forgot you witnessed that. I wrapped up this fella, right?" And we've seen that term often, Mr. Murphy, wrapped up. What does that mean? What did that mean at Brookhouse, that you wrapped up someone?
There was a control and restraint.
That's what wrapped up meant,
yeah.
Control and restraint. So I wrapped up this fella, right? And Pashali talks about getting upset. "I weren't getting upset, I was blowing out my arse, you prick. No, but I'm choking him." And he's going, "I thought 10 more seconds, you're going to sleep." He's like, Jan, I think that's enough." And he is mimicking choking and choking. And just above, actually, I may not have read after the sleep hold, "Oh, I forgot you witnessed that," says Pashali's hymn. "Oh, it was so funny, Derek. I wrapped up this fella, right?" And you say, "I remember." And that's when Pashali says, "Getting upset. I weren't getting upset. I was blowing up my arse, you prick." "No," says Pashali, "but I'm choking him." And he's going, "I thought 10 more seconds. You're going to sleep." He's like, Jan, I think that's enough. "Do you know what I've got this?" And he mimics choking. "Don't worry about it," mimics choking. Says, "Tully, I shat myself. I'm not going to lie. The nurse was right behind you, Jan, so..." And he says, "That's why I didn't." And says Pashali, "No, it's good, because obviously she's fucking..." And he says, "Not going to lie, but..." And then a phone rings, and that's the end of that conversation.
Well, I don't ever remember... This looks as if it's about D87, and the name, I remember him. He was actually he was an 8th officer unlock at one time, but he never displayed any violence towards anybody. He was a big guy. There's many's the time I sat in a room talking to him, even though he was an 8th officer unlock.
This has got nothing to do with D87, Mr.
Murphy. I thought that's who you were talking about.
That was the previous conversation. Let me tell you what it's about if you think you've forgotten. This was about an incident that occurred which you will have witnessed on Panorama, and if you've been watching the live stream of the evidence, Mr. Murphy, you'll know very well what it's all about. It's about D1527, an individual who was involved in self-harming incidents on the 25th of April, so a couple of weeks before the date of this conversation, when Jan Pashali was kneeling over this man and had his hands around his neck. Did you see that on Panorama?
I've seen the programme, yes.
Yeah. And have you been watching the evidence over the past few days?
Not every day, no. It was sporadically.
Yeah. Did you watch Jan Pashali's evidence?
No, I did not.
You
no.
didn't. Did you watch?
I work so I can't. I work
Fine.
during the day.
What evidence have you watched?
Just bits and pieces.
You watched Clayton Fraser,
I just watched bits and pieces.
Yeah.
I watched bits of Clayton's, but I was working,
Yeah.
so
but you know the footage I'm talking about.
I know the footage you're on
Yeah.
about. Yeah, I watched it when Panorama came out.
Yeah, and that was the 25th of April. And Callum Tully says putting people into sleep holes. And the reason, almost certainly, he used that term is because during the course of that incident, or the third part of that incident, Jan Pashali leans over. He says he was forced forward. It perhaps doesn't matter over much why. And he whispers, "You fucking piece of shit, because I'm going to put you to fucking sleep." So that's where the word sleep comes from. And Pashali is saying to Tully, "Oh, I forgot you witnessed that. Oh, it was so funny, Derek. I wrapped up this fellow, right? And you see those two words that you respond with, I remember. What did you remember about it, Mr. Murphy?"
I remember there was a medical response in that room, and I don't remember. I wasn't there, so I can't comment on any actions that was taken that, and I was only seeing what everyone else seen on Panorama. So
Yeah.
I wasn't there, and I can't comment on it. I'm sorry.
No, but here's Pashali saying it was so funny, Derek.
Well, he was talking to me, wasn't he?
Yeah. But do you think it was appropriate for somebody who'd been engaged in even a CNR wrapping up, as it was colloquially called in Brookhouse, do you think?
Maybe it was a coping mechanism that people had,
Yeah. Well,
because you were used so much.
to find fun in these things.
People say different things at different times.
Yeah. You see, because that's not where it ends, Mr. Murphy, just below, says Tully, because this was about Tully being a pussy, wasn't it? I weren't getting upset. Pashali was ribbing him. I was blowing out my arse, you prick. And then Pashali says, "No, but I'm choking him." Now, had you ever heard of a wrapping up technique, Mr. Murphy, where an officer choked a detainee? I was choking. These are his words. "No, but I'm choking him."
No.
And I thought, 10 more seconds, you're going to sleep. Now, as you were listening to this, remembering something about this incident, although you hadn't been there, what did you think to yourself? Did you think that that all sounded legitimate? Or
I can't remember what I thought of myself. It's a long time ago.
No, I get that. But if you had thought that there was anything inappropriate about what Pashali was saying here about what he had done to this detainee a couple of weeks earlier, what should you have done about it?
My thoughts are not in question here. I wasn't there. I cannot comment on it.
No, but you can comment on what you heard Pashali admitting.
I cannot remember. I just said to you that I can't remember the conversation.
You can...
If I remembered it, I'd comment on it.
Yeah.
So I can't comment on it if I can't remember it.
See, this is something else you can't remember. But if at the time it was clear to you, Mr. Murphy, that what Jan Pashali was doing was admitting to, in effect, an assault, choking someone, what should you have done, do you think?
I cannot comment on it because I cannot remember it, and I wasn't there with the incident.
So that's going to be your response.
Absolutely.
Go to page 44 of this transcript, please. We're still on the same day. There's a lot of conversations taking place. And about halfway down, there was a conversation with Jan Pashali talking about the minute you load him on, you lock the door. And this is about loading a detainee onto an escort van. He's in a cell basically in the back of the van, and a male officer, unidentified, given the number 1, says, "Yeah, in a prison van fair play. It wasn't a normal Tascor van, it was a prison van," says male officer 2. "That's what I'm saying," says Pashali. "We could have put him on the van if needs be, I've done it before." And you say, "We're not supposed to put them on the van. I mean, I've put something on the van. He'd lay down on the floor, and I've done that. Lifts just chucked him into the cell." And it continues, says Pashali, "I go, fucking get in, just get in." He said, "Do you want some air?" I go, "Open the door. I ain't giving him a..." and something's missed. Did you ever chuck anybody physically into a cell, Mr. Murphy?
No.
So when you
Is it
use
a van cell you're on about, I presume? Going by the conversation
you-
now. We weren't allowed to put people on vans.
no, so where you use the words, assuming the transcript is accurate, just chucked him into the cell. Can you decipher for us what you were saying?
I can't decipher for it because I don't remember the conversation. And I'm just going by what I'm reading here. Was it in a cell in a van? I never put anybody in a van because we weren't allowed. That was the escorts that were done that.
Yeah. On the next page, page 45, a third up from really the bottom of the end of that transcript, you see here, Pashali and Tully are still talking about the incident on the 25th of April, where Callum Tully was saying to Pashali that he'd found it all very difficult. And we've got Pashali saying, just about halfway down, it's very difficult to explain. Callum's had a taste. He didn't cry, but he got a bit upset. I didn't cry. I was tired, Jan. I was fucking knackered. You didn't see me having to try and pull him out of the toilet. So that puts beyond doubt, because we know what the facts are, and so did they, of what this discussion is all about. Callum, hear me out, says Pashali. When you saw him, I said you didn't cry. Yeah, I know I didn't. But you got a bit upset. I didn't say you cried. What I'm trying to explain is the likes of us, if these guys see us in full action, they'd be delighted. Now, you were there, Mr. Murphy. Do you understand from Pashali that he was glorifying violence? They'd be delighted. If these guys see us in full action, they'd be delighted. Did you understand it that way?
I don't understand the conversation, so no.
Try me, mate, says Tully. Male Officer 1, I'd love to watch it. And then Jan Pashali says this, we don't cringe at breaking bones. Did you remember hearing that? We
No.
don't cringe at breaking bones.
I don't remember hearing that, no.
Well, you responded, no, that's something was missed. And Pashali, if I killed, I wouldn't be bothered. I'd carry on. A lot of people are freaked out when something's missed. Not you, but something's missed again. But like proper bit scared. Someone like that fucking, and on it goes. We don't cringe at breaking bones. If I killed, I wouldn't be bothered. Now, I suggest you must have heard that because you reacted to the first part of it, Mr. Murphy. And what I'd like to know is if you heard that at the time, do you think you ought to have done something about it?
I cannot recall hearing that, so I can't comment on it.
I mean, it sounds like, as I said earlier, the glorification of the use of violence, don't you think?
I can't comment on it because I can't remember the conversation.
Let's go back to transcript 000, forgive me, 0000095, tab 51, Chair. So we're back to the 13th of May, and we go to page 6, and this time in relation to another detainee, D 1978. This is you, Mr. Murphy. I don't give a shit, says the detainee to your question, what's up, man? I don't give a shit because you guys fucked me up. And you say, well, I'll fuck you up in a minute. How are you going to fuck him up, Mr. Murphy?
I don't remember the conversation, so I can't remember the conversation.
No.
And I don't recognise the name of the
No.
detainee.
But it sounds like a threat, doesn't it, if you were being serious?
I don't remember the conversation, so I can't say what context it was in.
But you agree the words themselves sound like a threat?
I can't remember the conversation, so I don't know what context it was in. So I don't remember.
Let's go, please, to another transcript, TRN 0000027, It's time for the 18th of May at page 4, tab 55. Different topic, Mr. Murphy. We've got you 4 or 5 lines down saying, I'm going to say this. It's page 5, please. I'm going to say this, yeah, I don't know what the hell you've done. And you're referring your remarks to a female nurse. I don't know what the hell you've done. Bringing him back in off that van, that was abuse, you and bloody what's her name. And the nurse says, no, are you serious? And you say, yeah. And the nurse says, can I ask you something? How can you take a man that is on constant supervision and say he's going to kill himself and put him on a, what you're telling? You say, no, hold on, let me finish. And she says, let me tell you something. If anything happened to him, G4S is not going to stand up for me. And she talks about the NMC outlining everything that she's supposed to do. And you say, yeah, I just think because he was going to Barcelona, it was arranged for him to go. The only thing he'd done wrong was he tried to hang himself at the airport. Exactly, says the nurse, but there was no proof of that. Taskor never told us. It was him that told us. What was that all about, Mr. Murphy? Any idea?
I can't recall.
No idea?
I can't recall, no.
If I give you a possible cipher number, which is on your list, D2812, does that help you?
No.
No?
No.
So just looking at this, you're clearly having an argument with a nurse who is concerned about a man who is on constant supervision saying he was going to kill himself, who'd been taken off a van, and you were clearly upset with that, according to what you said towards the top of the page. But it doesn't ring any bells for you.
No.
Tab 60, Chair, another transcript, TRN 0000092. First of all, at page 24. Now, this is in relation to a detainee who is ciphered as D149. And we can see at line 721, you were captured saying, hold that door, hear you, there's some shouting, clean that window, clean the window, here, clean this window, and whatever D149 says is indecipherable. Tully tells D149 to go away, and he responds in some way that again is inaudible, and you say, tell him, if he keeps going on, I'm going to smash the fucking shit out of him. And the detainee is seen to be holding something in the palm of his hand. His arm is outstretched through the window of a door. And you repeat, I'm going to smash you upright. Clean that window. And D149 says, shut this bro, see easy. Do you remember that?
From what I recall from the footage, yes, I do.
Right. And do you agree that you threatened this man with smashing the fucking shit out of him? Is this what you were referring to earlier?
I wasn't. What do you mean earlier?
You said earlier that you were referring to
Yes.
some footage that
Yeah.
you had seen where you agreed you'd said something like it.
Yeah.
And I'm asking you if this is
Yes,
it.
it is.
Right.
But I remember that this detainee, I actually got Employee of the Month with the work I put in with this young man. But that's not in any transcript or video, is it?
You got Employee of the Month?
Because he was the only one. I was the only one that he would let near him. And he was one of the ones I used to sit in the room and he'd be crying. I actually was the only one that, with detainees, if they're going, he had mental issues.
Yeah.
Going by the nurses, and he was the only one I was the only one he would let be handcuffed to when he was being escorted to the hospital. And I waited in the hospital with him, but I don't see anything about that on here.
So, well, that's because this is a transcript of a conversation you had. It's
Yeah.
got nothing to do with whether you won an award for Employee of the Month, or for that matter, on other occasions when you escorted him to hospital.
Yeah.
But what it does have to do with is it shows you threatening a detainee with smashing the fucking shit out of him. Why do you think you did that?
I would never have done that. I never did do that.
No, but how did the detainee know that you didn't mean it?
Because I had a good rapport with the detainee.
Yeah. So because you had a good rapport, he would naturally think that when Derek says to me, "I'm going to smash the fucking shit out of you," he doesn't mean it.
20 minutes later, I was in the room sitting on the bed with him holding his hand. So obviously he knew. He built up a trust with me, and I built up a trust with him.
So why say it? If you had a rapport with a detainee, why are you using a threat like that?
Coping mechanism, frustration, overworked, overused for CNR,
What were you frustrated about, do you think?
lack of staff, lack of support.
No, but in this instance, looking at this transcript, what was it you were frustrated about, to utter the words?
I can't remember exactly. I can't remember exactly.
Well, there was something about cleaning a window. Was he not doing something he was supposed to
If I
do?
remembered, I would say it to you. You keep asking me the same question over again. If I remembered, I would say it to you. 'Cause in fact, when he came back from the hospital, he was a totally different person, and we sat down and we had a good chat together. He was a nice kid. I remember him, right?
Well, if we go to the next but one page, page 26. Tully says, "What are you doing? He's so annoying." And a detainee, it could be the same one, is in a cell banging the door, making lots of noise. And you say something that's not picked up. This is the 14th of June, by the way. "This needs to stay shut. Put your hand back in." And the detainee apparently extends his arm through the door window with an unlit cigarette in his hand. And you say, listen, stop fucking about. You understand me, stop, all right? That stays closed. Listen, I don't want to come back in this room again. You will be in trouble, all right? You understand, you don't want to be in trouble with me, trust me. What did being in trouble with Derek Murphy mean? What did that look like?
I would have took his tobacco off him because you'd allow him 2 or 3 cigarettes. And yeah, that was the main thing. That's the only trouble he would have been in with me.
So not physical, just purely
Absolutely not.
confiscating something.
Yes, absolutely.
And then on page 28, a detainee is clearly present. Drop your body to the something, and then Cullum Tully says he's not a happy bunny, is he? And then you say you look like a fucking mong. Get in your room. And then towards the bottom, he looks like a right cunt, doesn't he? We're back to language, but we're just going through the transcripts of what was developing. Who looked like a fucking mong or a right cunt?
I
Mr.
can't
Murphy?
remember. It's awful language. It's obviously I said it, but I can't remember who the detainee was.
Yeah. And so you accept if you said this, inappropriate, unprofessional,
Yes.
but just the coping mechanism, was it? Just as a result of frustrations, or...
It was inappropriate and unprofessional.
And then if we go to page 32, please, towards the bottom. And at line 908, this is you talking. You have to know, go ahead, they have to know that I'm not going to take any shit off them. And then you can go in with the Care Bears head on, you know. I find that Gary, honestly, I find that works. Put it on them, and you have to rag them up a bit, put them on the bed by the scruff of their neck or whatever, and then sit down and it's all right. Talk to them like fucking men. I noticed it kind of works, you know. What were you saying?
I can't remember the conversation.
Well, but we can get an idea, can't we, from the words?
I can't remember the conversation. I can't. I don't know what context it was in or anything. I can't remember the conversation.
Well, it was about detainees' behaviour. And what you're saying to somebody else is, first of all, that you're not going to take any shit off them, but you can go in with the Care Bears head on. What did you mean by
I don't
Care
understand.
Bears?
I don't remember saying that.
Yeah, because you found that works. Well, is that being compassionate? In other words, it's a bit of, you begin with a bit of tough love, in the sense that you make sure that they understand who's boss. Then you can go in with your Care Bears head on. In other words, you can be nice, so it's a bit of bad cop, good cop.
But they're your words, they're not mine.
No, they are my words. I'm asking whether you agree or disagree.
I disagree. Well, I don't know because I can't remember the conversation.
Yeah.
They seem to be your words, so
And
they're
then
not my words. So
line 912, put it on them, and you have to rag them up a bit. Put them on the bed by the scruff of their neck or whatever. What does rag them up a bit mean?
I don't understand the conversation. I can't remember the conversation.
What about put them on the bed by the scruff of their neck? What does that mean?
I can't understand the conversation. I don't. As I said to you again.
And then
I never put anybody on the bed with a scruff of the neck. So
and then sit down and it's all right. Talk to them like fucking men. So what you seem to be saying there is, in other words, rough them up a bit, and then sit them down, and it's all right. Talk to them like men.
it seems to be, but that's in your words. It seems to be, but I don't know. I can't remember the conversation. If I remember the conversation, I'll explain it.
Let's move away for a moment from this transcript and look at another document. Can we go please to CJS 005928, please? And that should be tab 5 for you, Chair, so you'll have to go into the first volume. Now, this was an investigation report by G4S into you, Mr. Murphy. You'll have seen this, I'm sure. Is that right?
I can't remember. I'll have a look at it if you don't mind. Let me just read through it for a second to see if I
Yep.
can remember it.
By all means, if you want to have a look or have a look in the hard copy, you can do that. What do you want to? I mean, I'm only.
You have a look on the screen, yeah, if you don't mind.
Well, I'm only going to take you to parts of it for the time being, but let's see how we go. Page 3, please. And what we'll see, perhaps page 2 to begin with, the BBC had raised several allegations which might constitute misconduct against you. It involved, so that you can get the big picture here, on the 8th of May, saying while on shift the previous week you chopped with your open hand or punched a detainee on E-wing under the chin, causing him to spit out a razor blade. On the 14th of June, you had said of a different detainee, we'll come to this, D1275, who'd taken spice. Look at the state of that. Imagine bringing that home to mother. Absolutely no sympathy for them at all. If he dies, he dies. Again, on the 14th of June, threatened a detainee with serious pre-existing mental health, who was later sectioned in the psychiatric hospital, by saying, clean this window. And that's what I wanted to look at, the third allegation. Tell him if he keeps going, I'm going to smash the fucking shit out of him. Something about the 6th of July. Then fifthly, on an unknown date, alleging you were alleged to have punched a detainee on the jaw after previously being bitten by him. And then allegation 6, in early 2017, you were alleged to have seen that a detainee, D275, who had self-harmed by cutting at the site of a recent hernia operation, causing himself to bleed, but you took no action. But it's allegation 3 that I'm interested in for the moment. Let's look at page 5, please, of this document. On the 14th of June, you threatened a detainee with serious pre-existing mental health issues who was later sectioned in a psychiatric hospital by saying, "Clean this window, tell him if he keeps going, I'm going to smash the fucking shit out of him. Stop fucking about, you understand, stop, and I don't want to come back in this room again. You'll be in trouble."
We just went through that a few minutes ago, didn't we?
Yeah, but that's why I'm asking you about what G4S found. And DCO Murphy was asked to explain his actions, as again this evidence is clearly seen and heard in the documentary. DCO Murphy stated that the detainee had been playing up, banging on the door. He went and closed the glass panel in the door, and this is when the detainee spat at the glass, and some spit hit DCO Murphy in the face. He described himself as becoming more frustrated at this. So when you were interviewed by G4S, you remembered what had gone on, but you've forgotten it since.
It's a long time ago, yes.
And DCO Murphy said, this is when he is seen on footage to turn and look over his shoulder and make these comments to Tully. Murphy went on to say that while these comments were said, he had no intention of actually acting them out. We asked DCO Murphy why he would make such comments to a vulnerable person and threaten a detainee. You denied it as being a threat, but accepted it didn't look good. You said that it was not said directly to the detainee, but admitted when pressed that it was said immediately outside the detainee's room and in earshot of the detainee, and in this case you accepted it may have been perceived as a threat by the detainee.
This wasn't an interview, it was an interrogation, and I remember it, yeah, and I did say that, yeah.
When challenged about making this statement on the top of page 6, DCO Murphy admitted it was neither professional nor acceptable. DC Murphy went on to say that although his comments were not professional, he had a good rapport with the detainee, which is what you've told us. And following this incident, sometime later, he was asked to accompany the detainee to a psychiatric hospital, which he did, reassuring the detainee that everything would be okay. He stated that although he was a big man, he had a soft side to him, and he cares and takes his job seriously, and this allegation wasn't contested by you. So you accept all of that, and certainly did at the time that G4S, as you put it, interrogated you.
Yes. But the reason why I've forgotten a lot between now and then, it's 5 years ago, and my coping mechanism with everything else that happened in my life since is a lot of alcohol and a lot of prescription drugs. So, and that's how I've been coping, and that's how I still cope. I know it's irrelevant to you and irrelevant to the inquiry, but it's very relevant to me.
No, well, we understand, and thank you.
Well, obviously you don't understand. It's not the way you're speaking to me this morning.
Well,
We continue, right? That's okay.
Mr. Murphy, I have a job to do. And,
Absolutely, I understand that.
You've given your evidence, and you are explaining why you are finding difficulty remembering these things, and the inquiry has heard your evidence, but I'm going to carry on asking you questions.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not going to stop.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Let's look at another transcript, please. Chair, back to the second volume, tab 57. It's TRN 0000080 at page 11.
Thank you.
And I'm asked on behalf of some of the core participants in this inquiry, Mr. Murphy, to ask you about this. It's the 5th of June, and you're in, I think, one of the staff rooms, and the television's on about the conflict in Syria and the number of British jihadists who'd gone to join the ranks of ISIS. And you say they shouldn't be allowed back in the country, mate. And Tully says, where are they from? And you say, and if they come back, put them in internment camps. Another officer says, they're from Britain, mate. And Tully says, oh, born in Britain. And you say, yeah, generation, they're all second generation. and another officer talks about Russia. Put them in internment camps and the television's on in the background. What do you think the best way to deal with them is, says Tully. And you say, well, and he says, well, they just said he was known to the security services. And you say, lock them up or fucking deport them, one of the two. And this other officer says, yeah, but are they going to get back, won't they? And they're talking across each other. And you say, well, what's the solution? The other officer says, try bullets. And you say, oh, well, that would be an ideal solution. And Tully says, yeah, reality is they're not going to allow that. And the officer says, let them go to Syria, get one of them, locate their little clip, send a drone in, delightful job done, British soil. And you say, think about this. In 2009, ISIS broadcast to the world saying that we are going to kill you with our soldiers disguised as refugees. And they done it, and the whole fucking Europe sat back and let it happen. And this other officer says, look what Germany did, let them all in. And you say, open the floodgates to them and refugees. There were soldiers. And the question I'm asked to ask you is whether those kind of views expressed there about refugees and trying bullets and so on were commonly held among staff.
I don't remember the conversation, but it was clearly not about Brookhouse, so everyone's entitled to their views, so I'm not going to comment on it.
Well, was there a general feeling that immigrants in general were threatening or dangerous?
I don't remember this conversation, so I'm not going to comment on it.
I'm going to come on to something else. We're slightly early for a break, Chair, by a minute, but perhaps that would be a good time for a break. So we'll have a break now, Mr. Murphy, of about a quarter of an hour, Chair.
Quarter of an hour.
Come back at
Thank you.
quarter
Thank you.
to 12.
Thank you.
All rise.
Thank you. Please take a seat. Mr. Oldham.
We're going now, Mr. Murphy, to deal with an incident which I'm sure you'll be familiar with, which is deals with D1275, who had taken spice on the 14th of June. Can we, by way of background, first of all, look at another document, so I'm going to have to go to another file. Chair, for you it's tab 41, for us CJS 001120. So I just want to put the whole thing in context. And if we scroll down from the top, please. We see this as a G4S health mental health referral form in relation to D1275. It's dated the 1st of May. And the reason he was referred, new admission, claims mental health issues, states he hears voices, repeated they will find me on admission, wouldn't elaborate on who he was referring to or what would happen if they found him. Preoccupied and inappropriate in manner, vague and misleading with answers to questions on admission. So that was the 1st of May. And clearly not a well man who was referred for mental health investigation. If we go, please, to another document, Chair, in the next tab for you, CJS 004978. And this is a security information report. The security information report, Mr. Murphy, which appears to have been opened on the 8th of June. If we go to the next page, subject heading medical response emergency under influence of drugs, and this relates to principally to D476, but it reads this way: around 2000 hours on the 8th of June, I was booking a detainee into room C109 on Clyde Wing and said he could go up to the room to put his property in. He came back saying there were some men in his room, but to my knowledge the room should have been empty. I walked to room C, it says 209, to find D1300, and it reads D318. Leaving the room appeared to be heavily under the influence of drugs. Upon entering the room I found D318, D1732 and D1275, both under the influence of drugs. D1732 appeared in a state that I found it necessary to call emergency healthcare response, laying on his side. Didn't appear to know what was going on, didn't respond to me when I asked if he was okay. And it continues about 1732, but I'm focusing on 1275. So on this occasion, the 8th of June, we have D1275 in a room on C Wing under the influence of drugs with two other men. Now, just looking at this sort of thing, Mr. Murphy, would you have known about this issue? I'm not saying that you reported on this taking of drugs any more than you filled out the form that I showed a moment or two ago on the 1st of May that he, 1275, was subject to mental health referral. But were you likely to have known anything about him or his background?
No, I don't think so, no. We were never given access to any medical records unless they were self-harmers. No, I wouldn't have, especially not mental health, no.
Did you work on E-wing at all?
I did, yeah.
And so would you assume that somebody on E-wing was unwell, or
Well,
was it not an assumption that was made by default?
E-wing was a place where if guys put down there for their own protection, or if they were being disruptive or unruly on the wings, if they were caused trouble when they were admitted to Brookhouse, or if they were after being in the segregation area and they were come back out to E-wing for a day or two and then back to their own wings. We did have ill people there. Well, as the mental health or the healthcare will come down with them and say, look, this guy's not well. We put him in a medical room. It's just with a bigger window in it. There's two rooms for that.
Yeah. But but what you're telling us is, as far as this man is concerned, you had no particular reason that you can
No.
recall now to know anything about him.
No.
Let's look at another document, tab 43 for you, Chair. It's another SIR, another Security Information Report. This one directly in relation to D1275. It's CJS 004642. And if we can go to the next page, please. Scroll down from the top. Incident location outside A wing, subject heading possible pass, and the content is at about 13:40 on Tuesday the 20th of June. And so this postdates the Spice attack, which I'm going to come to in a minute, which took place on the 14th of June. But it just showing some history about this man working on Eden Wing. At this time I left the wing, and as I did, I saw a detainee I now know to be 1275 squatted down by the A-wing door. Attempting to pass something under the door, I took hold of the item, which was a piece of paper coloured in, had some writing on it, asked him what this was and who he was giving it to. He was very aggressive and tried to snatch it from me. He wouldn't say what he was doing and who it was for, he just said it was his. I then said if it was his, why was he passing it under the door? He just swore at me and walked off. So that was the 20th of June, and perhaps if we go to page 4, we can see the sort of thing that, according to this SIR, he was trying to pass a piece of paper. Does that look like anything you'd seen before, Mr. Murphy?
No. Pardon me, no.
No. And if we go, please, to a document we have seen before in phase 1 of this inquiry, CJS 005347, tab 44. It's another security information report, this one dated the 26th of June. And if we go to the next page, the 22nd of June, not the 26th, it's again about the same man. Appears not to be in a positive, and some of the words fall off the page, so we either guess or don't read them. Appears not to be in a positive mental state, seems to be vulnerable, and I believe has been taken advantage of on C Wing. I believe that people are, something's missing, perhaps using him as a kind of guinea pig to try out drugs, as I have seen him socialise with detainees known to be active drug users perhaps, or dealers. Also at one point he was cleaning the tables downstairs. He isn't a cleaner. So having questioned presumably his roommate about this, his roommate says that there are detainees getting him to do the cleaning while they get something's missing, and in return giving him biscuits and other food items. He heard this from his roommate. I've also seen people take his cutlery and plates whilst at the food queue, and him presumably not saying anything. D1275 has been seen something by as a messenger by several detainees not on this wing, where they've treated him in an abusive manner, often clutching him by the neck, forcing him to go back and forth with messages, and was seen by another officer being asked to get a phone and demanding for this phone for another detainee. We don't feel that he is aware of some, perhaps, decisions that he makes, and he does get along with the Iranians in room C019, and his roommate does try to look after him, look for him, but we do think he could possibly be taken advantage of. So that's some of the history of this man, pre and post the incident that I will shortly come to. Did you have any idea that this man was being used by others as a guinea pig?
I don't know who the man is. I don't recognise the name.
You don't. You've got the name. You know the cipher D1275.
Yeah,
but
I don't recognise the name.
all right. Can I ask you to look at something else while we have you in the witness box, please, Mr. Murphy? It's tab 40. And forgive me while I find I haven't marked up this document, so I'm just looking for the correct page. Just give me a moment. Yeah, SXP 000057 at page 3. Something we've seen before. On line 14, on the 14th of June, there was another incident involving a detainee, and this is a BBC document, involving a detainee who took spice, named D1275. And then line 16, on the 15th of June, there were 4 medical responses called for spice attacks. 3 were simultaneous, one of which resulted in a detainee from Kosovo called D1275 having fits. His heart rate was so erratic, eventually an ambulance was called. On the 19th of June, there were 2 simultaneous incidents involving spice, also requiring medical responses. What was, first of all, was spice a particular problem in Brookhouse?
Yes.
And was it a daily problem,
Virtually, yeah.
often leading to medical emergencies like this one on the 14th of June?
Yes.
Go back, please, in the same document to page 2. I want to ask you about something else in this regard. You see the heading there is ease of access to illegal narcotics. At line 12,
yeah.
Line 21 refers to the 12th of May. Another detainee, 852, on E-Wing, after being observed high on spice, believed to have been given the illegal narcotic without his consent, spiked by other detainees. Did you know that of anything like that? So in other words, not only detainees taking spice voluntarily, but also other detainees, if not being used as a guinea pig, knowingly, deliberately being spiked with spice.
No, not to my recollection. I knew they were used as guinea pigs, as in asked to take them, but I didn't know about being spiked. To my recollection, anyway.
But there's no question, is there, Mr. Murphy, that some of these attacks, including that on the 14th of June that we just looked at and we'll look at again in a second, were so serious that they were life or death events, and
Yeah.
it was just pure luck that nobody died.
Yes, I agree.
And also, I suppose you'd have no idea, individuals, and probably not healthcare, in respect of individuals, whether they had tolerance to what they were taking,
No,
how much they'd taken.
I wouldn't have a clue.
So can we look, please, with that in mind, at TRN 0000092, please. And Chair, it's at tab 60, 60. Page 37, I think. And this is a whole episode with D1275. It begins, I think, you'll remember, in the courtyard. Do you remember that? Do you remember not seeing that on Panorama?
I can't remember.
And then eventually he's taken, if my memory serves me, to a room. No? Doesn't mean anything?
At the minute, I can't remember.
All right. But what you may remember towards the end of page 37, at line 1097, is you saying, I've no fucking sim, and you don't complete the word. Look at the state of that. Look, imagine bringing that home to your mother. Why did you say that?
The frustration, I presume, because all the spice attacks. It was horrible, and it was probably it's not very nice. And I apologise to the inquiry for it, but it was very, very frustrating when you're dealing with these, and sometimes multiple times in the same day. Yeah, it was. It was very unprofessional, and it wasn't very nice, and I do apologise for it.
I mean, did you have no fucking sympathy for him, even though you
It's not the fact that I didn't have sympathy for them. It was on numerous times I've sat with some guys, and I'd say to them, I told them that one day someone's going to die, and I'd explain it and we agree, boss, and whatever. And then the same guy, you might spend a week trying to talk out of it. He'd be turning up on the E-wing, and he'd be in an awful state.
Yeah. Look at the state of that. Imagine bringing that home to your mother. I mean, what was the point in saying something like that?
It was very unprofessional, and I apologise already for saying it was very unprofessional.
You do.
Pardon?
I said you do apologise for
Yeah.
it, but do you also accept that to those around you who are hearing you say that sort of thing, it becomes a culture where people just say uncaring things, inappropriate and unprofessional things, and it leads to sort of mushrooming, like an infection, that if one person can say it, everybody can say it.
That was the culture within Brookhouse. We were a product of our environment, unfortunately.
But you understand what I'm saying, that it leads to this sort of thing, because you're not the only person, but it leads to a culture whereby not only do people say things like this, and you said that sort of thing here, but it leads others to think not only that it's all right, but perhaps it impacts on the way that they think about these detainees.
Yeah, I agree,
and care for them.
And again, I apologise to the inquiry for that, and it was very unprofessional and not very nice.
I assume, Mr. Murphy, you'll agree with the words you've just used when I ask you to consider what you said at page 40. Because at this point you were actually in the man's room. At line 1231.
Line what, sorry?
1231. And this time you complete the sentence that you, forgive me, Chair, as tab 60, line 1231, page 40. It's this time you complete the sentence you failed to complete a little earlier. This time you say, I've no sympathy for them. Absolutely no sympathy for them at all. If he dies, he dies. What are you saying about that?
I brought this up at my interrogation with the G4S, that the whole conversation wasn't aired. It was cleverly edited for effect, because I did not say that sentence as it's written down, or that it was portrayed on the BBC.
Are you serious about that,
and
Mr. Murphy?
the guys that were investigating agreed with me in the interrogation.
Sorry, who agreed with you?
The gentlemen that were interviewing me for G4S agreed with me in the interview or interrogation that it was edited. You
No.
can clearly see it when the footage is run.
Well, we're going to run it so that the chair can make up her own mind as to whether it's clearly edited.
Well,
Because
I know for a fact it was edited.
well, I'm sure you want to say that.
No, it's not. I want to. It's a fact.
All right, we'll see about that. But
Yes,
in your
okay.
first witness
Thank you.
statement, Mr. Murphy, please listen to me. In your first witness statement of paragraph 18A, what you say is that you had spent time explaining the dangers of taking spice, yet they continued to do so. Yeah?
18. Sorry,
A.
I've only got 18. I haven't got 18A. Or
Maybe your second witness
is that
statement.
Annex B or A or B?
Wait a sec.
I
A,
believe the
it's
second.
Yeah,
two.
it's
It's the
Annex
second
B, yeah.
statement, not the first.
Do you have that, Mr. Murphy?
I do indeed, yes.
This is what you said. The fact that I had no sympathy for detainees is that I've spent lots of time explaining the dangers of taking spice to detainees, and yet they continue to take it. It's similar to a parent educating their child not to touch something dangerous, and they continue to do so. I am shown to quote a line from a movie which was said in jest as a coping mechanism for dealing with the situation. It's clear that my voice changes when I make the movie quote, and it's clear that the footage has been edited for dramatic effect. It's not my attitude towards detained persons. I'm the only one in the footage who asked the detainee several times if he's okay, and I put him in the recovery position. So you're clear, and you've repeated it to us now, Mr. Murphy, that it's a fact that the BBC edited it for dramatic effect, yeah?
Yes,
And you rely on, as I understand it, what you say the G4S investigator said as supporting your contention.
they verbally agreed with me when we watched it. We watched it several times on a big screen at the interview, and you can see the light changing. You can clearly hear my voice changes. It's just, yeah, it was
You,
dramatised for effect. Yes,
you don't think this is all a bit desperate, do you, Mr. Murphy?
absolutely not.
No.
Your words, not mine.
They are my words, and I'm asking you whether you think this is just all a bit desperate.
Well, I refuse to answer that question because it's not really a question. I totally disagree with it. Yes.
Let's, just before we look at the footage, go to a document we looked at earlier. Chair, tab 5 for you, CJS 005928, page 4. This is the allegation on the 14th of June. Imagine bringing that home to mother. Absolutely no sympathy for them at all. If he dies, he dies. And then you say a little further down, with regard to the comment, this is what you told G4S in the interrogation, as you put it, if he dies, he dies. You explained that that's, whilst you said this, you were referring to a Rocky movie in which Dolph Lundgren, the actor, made that comment. Yeah? Is that right?
Yes.
That's what
sorry,
you were
sorry,
saying.
beg your pardon. Yes.
That's what you're saying. If he dies, he dies comes from one of the Rocky movies in which one of the lead actors made the comment. You went on to say that you said it in an accent, attempting to imitate the actor, and on reviewing the CCTV footage with Mr. Murphy, there would appear to be a slight deviation in your accent as you made the comment. Murphy admits he has no sympathy for detainees who take illicit drugs, such as spice, and suffer an attack. He said that's their choice. When challenged about the comment, you said you did care for detainees in general, but had no sympathy for them when they took drugs, but this didn't mean you didn't act in a professional manner. You didn't want anyone to die. But over the page, you acknowledged that your comments as shown in the documentary were unacceptable. The comment listed in the second allegation, not shown in the programme. Look at the state of that. Imagine bringing that home to mother. You denied saying it. Did you accept saying that now? Imagine bringing that home to mother?
I can't remember saying it, but if it's there, I must have
Yeah.
said it.
No.
So I'm not admitting or denying.
No, you say that G4S backed you up, the investigator, after their interrogation.
I said verbally they backed me up, and which they did.
Yeah, but you'll agree that all they say here on page 4 about what you claimed was a change in the course of the footage is it was a slight deviation in accent. That there's no suggestion in this document, is there, that G4S supported your view, Mr. Murphy, that the BBC had edited it for dramatic effect?
Verbally they did.
Verbally they did, but
Yes.
in writing they declined to.
As I say again, verbally they did.
Well, let's look at the footage so others can make up their own mind. The footage is KenCov 1035. It's V 2017-06-14 0015. And I'd like to start, and we can go back and forth if you wish, Mr. Murphy. It starts at 0016 and 20 seconds. Just a little before there, please, Anna. It starts at about 20 seconds. That's it.
Sorry? Oh, no sympathy for him. Absolutely no sympathy for him at all. If he dies, he dies. No. Are you fasting?
Right, let's just stop there. Can we just go back to 1620, please?
Sorry? Oh, no sympathy for him. Absolutely no sympathy for him at all. If he dies, he dies.
Pause and stop. So, Mr. Murphy, looking at that, you're telling us, first of all, if he dies, he dies, apart from dropping your voice a bit. That's a different accent.
Well, it was meant to be. I'm not a very good impressionist. I
No.
never said I was.
Clearly not. And you say that somewhere
Please,
in between, this
You
has
don't
been...
have to speak to me like that. It's not really fair him speaking to me like that, is it?
Mr. Murphy, all Mr. Altman is attempting to do is to take
I
your
know, but-
evidence, so
You're being very condescending. You know, that's not really fair, is
Mr.
it?
Murphy, can you please just limit yourself to answering...
Well, I'm allowed to stand up for myself, sir. That's what I'm saying to you.
No, well, you're not here to stand up for yourself. You're here to answer questions. All I'm asking you is whether you are saying that in what we have just listened to, the words "he dies, he dies" were said as mimicry of Dolph Lundgren in one of the Rocky films, or whether you were just using your voice by dropping it a bit because you were being serious.
I wasn't being serious.
No. And where do you say, for dramatic effect, the BBC edited this footage?
Well, you can see the light changes in the background.
And how was the timestamp interfered with?
I don't know. I
Because
didn't
this
see
is
it.
digital, it's not analogue.
I didn't see it.
But you're clear in your mind
Yes.
that this has been interfered with to make you look bad.
If it had happened in the one conversation, I'd say it did, but I know for a fact it didn't.
I mean, if he dies, he dies is something that we have heard others use.
But I use it there, and I apologise. And it's a horrible thing to say, and I wouldn't wish anybody dead. It wasn't very nice.
You see, 2 weeks before this event, on the 27th of May, another officer, Dave Webb, does that name mean something to you? Dave Webb?
Yes.
On the 27th of May, while preparing for a use of force on D1914, it's said exactly the same. If he dies, he dies. And whether or not, do you agree, he, like you, was trying to mimic 4 words from an actor's script in a Rocky movie? It doesn't really matter, does it? It's the sentiment that goes with the words which are uttered.
When I said it, it wasn't very nice. It was horrible, and I shouldn't have said it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very professional, and I do apologise for it.
It sounds callous, doesn't it?
It just doesn't sound very professional. It does sound, yeah, it does. I agree.
Yes. Was it coincidence or culture that not just you but others used words identical to that?
Well, I can't speak for them. It just wasn't very pleasant it wasn't very professional the way I said it.
Let me then ask you, please, about something else. I want to ask you about another detainee altogether, D523. Now, D523 has made a witness statement to the inquiry, and Chair, it's tab 27. And it relates to events which he says took place on and after the 14th of April 2017. By way of background, Mr. Murphy, this detainee had been on an ACDT for some time, and perhaps before we go to his witness statement, let's just look at this care and separation form, please. It's CJS 001655, Chair, it's tab 26.
Thank you.
And so we can see that's the front cover of the DCF1. He was on Rule 40. And we can see at the top, date located into Rule 40, the 14th of April in the evening. And he was finally removed from it on the 17th. And if then we move on to page 2, just by way of background, reasons for removal from association. Not sure this is an ACDT actually, but a care and separation form. Detainee 523 has been placed onto Rule 40 after a protest on D-Wing Yard. Is this what you were talking about earlier, the protest?
I can't remember this. If we go on if it is, at the minute I can't tell.
Right. He incited other detainees and charged at staff when they were trying to help a detainee who was having medical problems at the time.
That sounds like the same one, yeah.
Yeah. And so that was the 14th of April. On the next page, page 3, a 24, presumably hour extension was authorised for the safety and security of the centre. And I'd like to go, please, first to page 7. It's difficult to read, but if we look at 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 entries down, can we see your name in the name position column? DCO Murphy, twice.
Appears to be there, yeah.
So it looks as if on the 15th of April twice at, is it 12:20 and 17:20, you were involved in dealing with him on E-Wing, presumably. Lunch given and then dinner given.
It looks like it, yeah.
Yep. And then again, insofar as I've been able to read this document, although some of it is difficult, if we go please to page 14, this time the 16th of April, again 12:20 lunch given, 17:20 dinner given, 2 entries in your name, and then if we skate over 2 other entries, there's a third, I think, on the 16th at 20:55, which seems to have your name by it sitting on bed. Yeah?
Appears to be mine, yeah.
Which suggests, therefore, Mr. Murphy, that at least during those times you were on duty on E-Wing and dealing with him on the 15th and the 16th. If you can't remember, would you know, as a matter of generality, if you were giving him lunch and giving him dinner, for example, on the same day, does that mean you were on duty and your shift took you into E-Wing the whole day?
It depends on what was going on in the site, in the estate.
So you could have come off E-Wing and gone back on E-Wing?
Yeah.
Right. So with that in mind, let's just look at what he has to say. So back, Chair, to tab 27, DL 0000232. And can we begin, please, on page 13? And his statement is divided up into periods of time. This you can see is the 14th to the 17th of April. I attended a protest in D-Wing Courtyard and I was removed from association under Rule 40. I understand from the disclosure from the inquiry that this was at 20:30 on Friday the 14th of April. And then he talks about use of force at paragraph 40. I understand from the disclosure from the inquiry that following the use of force I was reportedly seen by healthcare in the CSU. And then at 41 he says, I clearly recall the events of that evening. And just by way of introduction, the main instigator of the protest was another detainee man who wore glasses. All of us detainees agreed to participate in the protest by standing in the D-Wing Courtyard, refusing to go inside at lockup because we were upset and believed the officers were treating us badly. And I'm not going to read the rest of that page, but he sets out his complaints and what he accepts and doesn't accept about what happened. And then at the top of the next page, paragraph 42, I understand from the disclosure from the inquiry that on Saturday the 15th of April, my stay in the CSU was extended for a further 24 hours until Sunday the 16th of April, and we saw that in the document, followed by a further extension of 24 hours to Monday the 17th of April. I understand from my solicitors it's unclear if my Rule 40 was properly authorised by the Home Office beyond that initial 24-hour extension, as no Home Office official has signed the paperwork. And then he goes through a series of entries in the record sheet. And then paragraph 43, please, on page 16. I clearly recall my time spent in the CSU following the protest and note the following. After arriving to the CSU, myself and the others in the CSU telephoned the police again, 2 or 3 times. The police told us they would look into it for us. I'm not sure what, if anything, happened. To that, I remember Brookhouse officers being upset that we had telephoned the police. Did you know anything about that, Mr. Murphy, this man or others complaining to the police?
No, I can't recall.
What he said earlier, just to put it in context, is during the protest, myself and many other detainees telephoned the police because we believed we were being treated unfairly and without human rights. And so it was a protest. And then subparagraph B, I don't accept that after I arrived in the CSU I made threats. I had no idea what a memorial poppy meant. So this is more about allegations which he understood were being made. C, on the morning after the protest, which I understand from my records to be Saturday the 15th of April, I remember being let out of my cell in the CSU to have a shower, and when I returned, my mobile phone was missing. I got riled up and asked the officers to give me my phone. I remember being told that the main block officer, Derek Murphy, knows where it is and that I would have to wait for him. I remember Derek Murphy being Irish, tall, overweight, bald, with a white beard and white frame glasses. Now, did you know anything about his phone, Mr. Murphy?
No.
I believe my mobile phone was taken from me because the officers were upset that I telephoned the police, and I believe that they were punishing me for doing so and making sure I didn't make any further calls to the police. I recall constantly asking the other officers for my phone, and they kept saying that I would have to ask the block officer, Derek Murphy. This was extremely distressing, as it was my only way to contact anyone, including my legal representative. It made my time in CSU feel even more isolating, and I was also not able to get legal advice on my situation. Were you continually asked by this man for his phone, Mr. Murphy?
I can't recall.
What, you,
I just can't recall.
one way or the other?
I honestly can't recall that event.
So you can't say one way or the other whether he asked you for his phone back?
From my memory, when a detainee was put in CSU under Rule 40, they weren't allowed anything in the room. But I can't comment on that because I honestly, that doesn't ring any bells to me at all.
Right. And then he deals with being told that they were going to transfer him to Brook. Paragraph G, I recall that while I was in the CSU, I was forced to spend a lot of time with Derek Murphy, and we had lots of arguments. I also remember that whenever I would be clearly upset at being locked in the room, Derek would make faces at me, sticking his tongue out, chanting ha-ha and whistling at me and laughing at me. This made me feel even more frustrated and upset, and like he was getting pleasure from my distress. What do you say about that?
That I don't recall that, but that would never happen on my show when I was on duty, because their job there was to de-escalate and get them out of the CSU as quick as possible.
At some point, I'm not sure if it was that day or the following, Sunday the 16th of April, I recall banging the door, calling out to the officers to return my phone. I then remember Derek Murphy coming into my cell, putting his gloves on, grabbing me by the neck and saying he was going to kill me. I felt shocked and scared, as I could not believe that an officer would do that to me. I wanted to complain, but I thought no one would ever believe me. To this day, the incident is still with me, and I have flashbacks, and sometimes I wake up and feel like someone is holding my throat and chest. A serious allegation there, Mr. Murphy, that you grabbed this man by the neck and threatened to kill him. Anything that you would do, Mr. Murphy, or did do, as far as this man's concerned?
I cannot recall that. I would never do that.
That you never, for example, say that you're going to smash the fucking shit out of someone or anything like that?
This, I don't recall that, and I would never say that.
And
I would never threaten to kill anybody.
No, no one's suggesting you would, but...
Well, that's what I was saying there.
No, he threatened. He says you threatened to.
I didn't.
I
would not threaten to kill anybody.
No. But you agree that some of the words we've looked at in the past constituted threats, don't you? Threats to assault.
I beg your pardon?
You agree that some of the words that we saw you utter on other occasions amounted to threats to assault people?
But not directly to them, but yes, I agree.
Right. And then on the next page, he said one of the main reasons why he was upset and distressed and swearing and banging on his door was because his mobile phone had been taken from him, and this was my only way to contact the outside world at the top of 18, and also because I really hated being in the CSU, especially with Derek Murphy as the main officer. I felt trapped, isolated and anxious. On the 17th, I was taken from the CSU to E-Wing. Before being taken to E-Wing, I remember Derek Murphy gave me my mobile phone and said, "Sorry, I left your phone in my uniform and took it home by mistake." Does that ring any bells with you?
Absolutely not. No, I can't recall. I would never. I always made sure I had nothing in my pockets going to leave work, because we weren't allowed any mobile phones in.
Yeah, and then at letters K and L, he says what he did and didn't do about these matters. So as far as you're concerned, Mr. Murphy, you don't remember any of this or have any distinct recollection of this, but what you're telling us you would not have done is made any threat to kill him.
Absolutely
or
not.
taken him by the scruff of the neck.
No.
No. Right, let's look at something else, please, in relation to another individual, D1251, a use of force on the 4th of May. And let's just look, please, at something Callum Tully had to say about this in a video diary. It's TRN 0000045, chair tab 48.
Thank you.
At page 3. Just at the top, and this is Callum Tully being debriefed by the BBC at the end of a day. Derek was basically bragging about how he stopped a detainee from swallowing a razor blade, and he essentially said that he went into the cell, gave him an uppercut to the throat, so he basically coughed the razor blades right out. And he took great pleasure in telling this to the whole office and found it quite funny, and so did quite a lot of the members of staff. Did you ever physically punch any detainee throughout the whole time you were there?
No,
Ever uppercut anybody?
absolutely not.
Ever uppercut anybody who had said that he was swallowing and had razor blades in his mouth in order to get them out of his mouth?
No.
So this is a complete fiction. But do you remember telling Callum Tully this?
As I told the inquiry already, I used to tell Callum load of stories, and excuse my language, a load of bullshit stories, because he fed off it, and that's what I gave him.
That this was one of the allegations, you'll remember. We don't perhaps have the time to go back to it, but in that G4S investigation report, it was one of the several allegations made about you, and it was as a result of what you had told Callum Tully. And you denied making the comment, I think, and the action alleged when you spoke to G4S.
I say there's that many stories that I told Callum Tully. I don't know. I can't remember
Right.
what ones we told him.
Let's look at a transcript we looked at several times already, please. Chair tab 51, TRN 0000095 at page 32. 32. See, this is Dan Small, and I asked you about this earlier, but putting it in context of what Callum Tully was saying to the BBC. Do you remember I showed you this earlier? Small and Lake on
Yeah.
B-Wing.
Yes, I do.
Geezer bit his hand, wrapped him up in the office. The geezer bit Derek's hand, and then he bent over. Derek uppercutted him, cracked him straight in the jaw. Lip was all over the place. And of course, there's nothing here about any razor blades. But again, if it's not the same incident, it's an incident where Small and Lake are talking to each other, and Dan Lake remembers an incident. So this isn't you telling tall stories. This is they talking about you, where someone bit your hand and you uppercutted him, cracked him straight in the jaw. Now, were they just making this up, the pair of them, or
I
did
can't
that
speak
happen?
for them.
No, well, did it happen, Mr. Murphy?
No, it didn't happen. No.
No. In his evidence yesterday, I think it was, Dan Small, talking of events on the 13th of May, said that he thought he'd been referring to you. He was asked about this by Mr. Livingston on behalf of the inquiry, that he thought he'd been referring to you, but he couldn't remember the incident. But when he was pressed on it, he said that effectively what he was saying was accurate, or what was being said here was accurate, that he saw everything, and that you had cracked this man in the jaw. Sorry, was it Lake? It was Lake, forgive me, not Dan Small. Dan Lake was saying in his evidence that he thought he'd been referring to you. He couldn't particularly remember it, but that he said he saw everything, and that you had uppercutted this man and cracked him in the jaw. So we have evidence from another erstwhile colleague of yours who said it, as far as he recorded it, happened. That he was telling the truth.
How was he telling the truth when he said he thought? So that did not happen.
Can we look at the footage? There was some body-worn footage of a particular incident which involved a man who use of force was used on the 4th of May, and it relates to D1251. Chair, because this footage has not been redacted, I'm going to have to ask for it to be shown in closed session, so it will require the public gallery to be closed, but it'll only last a couple of moments. Are we okay? All right. Just a few moments, Mr. Murphy. And while we do it, can we put up on screen CJS 005928, please? Thank you. At page 2. This is the investigation report, and you'll see allegation 1 was on the 8th of May. You said that while on a shift the previous week, you had chopped with your open hand or punched a detainee on E-wing under the chin, causing him to spit out a razor blade, which the detainee had concealed in his mouth. That was Callum Tully's allegation in the video diary. The video diary date, which I showed you a little earlier, was the 8th of May. And the footage I've just shown you is the 4th of May in relation to D1251. And what I'm asking you is whether during that use of force, but before the body-worn camera was switched on, whether that was the man that you struck.
I didn't strike any man.
So that never happened. That didn't happen. You didn't strike
You
anyone.
just accused me of striking someone. I did not strike him.
No. So that we're clear, did you say those words to Callum Tully?
I can't remember saying that to Callum Tully.
You don't remember saying that either?
You just said there, and that should be struck off, that you just said, is that the man you struck?
Yeah.
I didn't strike any man.
You didn't strike anyone.
But you
So-
said I did.
No, well, these are the words that...
They were your
No,
words.
Mr. Murphy, wait.
No, they were your words.
Yes, I know.
You spoke and said,
I'm asking you
is that the man
a
you
question.
struck?
Yeah. I'm asking you a question.
Yeah, you said,
Yeah.
is that the man you struck?
Yeah, because Callum... Listen to me, because Callum...
No, you said, is that the man you allegedly struck?
Mr.
That's
Murphy,
the
we
way I would have put it.
both know what we're talking about here.
No,
You
well, we
uttered-
do, but
Yeah.
the public don't.
Right.
I'm just pointing out, that's all.
Thank you.
No, you're
Callum
welcome.
Tully on the 8th of May...
So no, I did not strike that man.
Callum Tully on the 8th of May told the BBC that you had bragged to him and others that you had struck a man in order to loosen or release from his mouth a razor blade. That was the
Yes.
allegation. They were your words.
But you
Yeah.
said to me there now, is
Yeah.
that the gentleman you struck?
Yeah. And so
There's there's nothing to say that I struck that gentleman, only Callum Tully's
Yeah.
word.
Fine. No, well, it's your word.
It's not, I'm telling you, I didn't strike him.
Fine. So that's the difference
But you
between
said I
us.
did.
I'm asking you.
No, I know you are, sir, but
Yeah.
I'm just pointing out to you that
Yeah.
you said, is that the gentleman you
Yeah.
struck?
I'm asking you. And you say
But
you
there's no
didn't.
evidence to say I struck anybody.
Well, the evidence...
So when it comes to the public,
Mr. Murphy, the evidence is from your own mouth, according to Callum Tully.
but that's what Callum Tully says.
Yeah,
I do not
I know.
remember saying
I
that.
know, and people
so
often-
it's allegedly said.
Yeah, but Mr. Murphy, people often give evidence
That's allegedly said.
of what others say they said to them.
Yeah, but I'm allowed to point out what
Yeah.
I think.
Well, you've
and
made
thank
your
you very
point
much
very
for
well.
letting me do that.
No,
I
you've made
appreciate
your
it.
point. So
Thank you.
your case is that you didn't punch anybody,
That's
Right.
correct. That's correct.
and so that we're clear after you've left us about what you're telling us. Did you say what Callum Tully says you
I
said?
do not recall saying that to Callum Tully.
No. And do you recognise the conversation that Dan Small had with Dan Lake?
No, I do not.
You don't recognise that either?
No.
So, that we're clear, on no occasion have you ever laid hands, other than during a control and restraint, on any detainee?
To my recollection, yes.
Well, by which I mean, have you ever punched anyone, slapped anyone, chopped anyone?
No.
Ever? Taken them by the scruff of
No.
the neck, fucking smashed the shit out of them, or done anything like that? Threatened to kill them?
I didn't.
No?
I didn't smash the shit out of. Excuse my language. I didn't smash the fucking shit out of anybody, as you say. I said those words.
Yeah.
I said those words,
Yeah.
and which I apologise for, and I didn't. I would never have done that. But I did not smash, in your words, smash the shit out of anybody.
Well, actually, they're your words, Mr. Murphy.
No, they're
I'm
yours.
just
You
repeating
said.
them. Can we look at another document? Chair for you, tab 17. It's CJS 001506. Did you remember an allegation by D2953 who said that he was assaulted by you on 3 occasions? And it's encapsulated in this email. An incident on the 10th of June of 2017 occurred in the CSU. D2953 said an officer by the name of Derek came into the room and punched him on the thigh. And there was another young male officer who was present at the time who was stood by the door when Derek entered and allegedly hit him. On the next day, the 11th of June, whilst he was in CSU at some point in the day, again, the same officer, Derek, entered the room and punched him on the chest. And then on the 16th of June, in the staff room on E-Wing, at around 11 in the morning, Derek took him into the staff room, hit him round the left side of the head, catching his ear. A manager with a red tie was present at the time in the office, witnessed the incident. After the incident, Derek allegedly went to 2953's room and shook his hand by way of an apology. Do you recognise any of that?
No.
you've heard it before, presumably. You've heard the allegations before.
No, I didn't hear the allegation before.
This is all new to you.
I didn't hear that
No, no.
allegation before.
Are you saying this is all brand new?
I did not hear that allegation before.
But what does that mean?
I didn't hear it. Yeah, I'd
So
never heard it
I'm
before.
asking you, Mr. Murphy, is this the first time you've ever heard that anybody alleged?
I
that
read it
you-
in the questions here that you gave me.
So you have heard it before.
I've seen it before, but I've never heard anybody knowing I was never approached or anything, right? To my recollection.
Do you remember this being dealt with by the PSU?
No, I do not.
If we go to further down into this document, on page 20, it's the same document, page 20, you'll see that there was a Home Office investigation into the circumstances surrounding the treatment of D2953, who said he was assaulted by you on the 10th, 11th and 12th of June while at Brookhouse. You've seen this document, haven't you, Mr.
No, I
You
did
haven't,
not.
so you've never seen it. Did you not appreciate that the PSU had looked into this?
I didn't. I cannot remember that. I can't remember it at all. No.
Look on page 28. Paragraph 6.2. Summary of Acting Detainee Custody Manager Derek Murphy's evidence taken from a telephone conversation on the 13th of December 2017. Did you forget that?
I cannot recall it. If I recalled it, I would speak about it.
Officer Murphy stated the following: he had nothing to answer for. He didn't make a habit of assaulting detainees. He remembered D2953, did his best to reintegrate him on the wings, but every time he did, he would get into a fight with his roommate and would then end up back on E-wing. D2953 used to bang a lot. He broke a couple of cups, crockery, which can be sharp. These were the only times he had dealings with him. He couldn't understand the allegations, which could possibly be B, because sometimes they had to say no to D2953. He denied assaulting him at any time, wanted to make that clear. D2953 used to walk around the wing saying it was his human rights. He wanted compensation. He would do this every day and would annoy other detainees. He used to walk around in his boxer shorts, which is not a nice sight, particularly with female officers around. If they asked D2953 to go into his room, he kept saying it's his human rights. He arranged for him to be transferred to a single occupancy centre at the Verne, but he ended up returning to Brookhouse. So you'll agree that you spoke to the PSU about this?
By this I did, but I do not recall that.
And
If I recalled it, I'd speak about it.
Yeah, and on page 32 is the PSU's consideration of evidence and conclusions, which included the account given by the detained man. There's the allegation at paragraph 7.1, and they review all of the evidence, and I'm going to go immediately to their conclusion on page 35. Crucially, they say some of this mistreatment by acting DCM Murphy was around the same time as when D2953 alleges he was mistreated by Officer Murphy. And so there's a whole catalogue of other allegations that he made. On a balance of probabilities, it's therefore right and proper for this investigation to attach weight to the information contained within the BBC Panorama programme when assessing D2953's allegations against acting DCM Murphy. And so not only did he make allegations, the PSU took into account allegations on the Panorama programme. D2953 also appears to have been let down by processes inside Brookhouse in June 2017 when he mentioned he'd been assaulted. The allegation should have been flagged to e.g. the Home Office, Immigration Team and Detention Services. Over the page at the very least, D2953 should have been handed a complaints form and assistance should have been given to him via e.g. the Centre Welfare Officer, given the fact that English is not D2953's first language, for him to provide full details of the assault. The fact all of these necessary steps were not taken back in June when he mentioned he'd been assaulted, when balanced against the rest of the evidence, which includes his call to the EASS helpline. On the 16th of June, the fact he mentioned on the 20th of June to the officer in the library he'd been assaulted. 3 attempts to alert DCM Page as well as healthcare staff on the 29th of June. A note by healthcare on the 29th of June who recorded a question mark over injuries prior to that day. A further call to the helpline on the 29th of June in which he mentioned he'd been assaulted, as well as the evidence featured in the BBC Panorama programme with regards to acting DCM Murphy's conduct at Brookhouse leads to the conclusion that something did happen to D2953 as he states. Therefore, on the balance of probabilities, the conclusion reached by this investigation is there's substance to his allegations. Consequently, the allegation is substantiated. What's your view about that, Mr. Murphy?
I don't recall any of that.
What is it you don't? What don't you recall?
I don't recall any of it.
When you say any of it, what, the investigation or the actual facts underlying the investigation?
The facts and the investigation.
Right.
As I told you, as I stated to the inquiry already, in the last 5-6 years, I've been using a lot of alcohol and prescribed drugs to get over my PTSD and my anxiety over a lot of stuff, including this.
Yeah.
So it just seems to be, it didn't seem to hear it at all. And I just, yeah.
Final topic, please, Chair, if you allow me to finish it, and so we can allow Mr. Murphy to go.
Thank you.
Relates to an alleged incident in the spring of 2017. And Owen Syra, do you remember him?
Vaguely. I think he was a welfare officer, I think.
Yeah. Did you watch him give evidence in the first phase of
No.
this inquiry? We go Chair tab 35, INN 000007, at page 39. This was his first statement. We go to page 39, please. And this is what he had to say. In approximately spring 2017, a detainee was rude to a female colleague, and I advised him that his behaviour was unacceptable. The detainee punched me, and I suffered a glancing blow. A first response team was called. However, by the time the team arrived, the detainee was already restrained. My colleague, Derek Murphy, was the first in, and he punched the detainee while he was restrained. I managed to pull Derek away, and I spoke to him afterwards and told him I was shocked at his behaviour, and if I saw him do anything like that again, I'd report it. Derek accepted that he had lost it. Since this incident, I felt guilty for not reporting it. However, following the bullying and harassment I received for reporting a racist comment he refers to made by Sam Gurney, I was reticent to do so. And when he gave evidence about the matter, Chair 47, tab 47, which is INQ 000101 at page 31. If we can expand the top right, please. He was being asked questions on this topic. The final topic is the question at line 10, which is mistreatment against a detained person. Particular incident I want to ask you some questions about in your first witness statement of paragraph 162, which is what we were just looking at. You describe an incident in which DCM Derek Murphy punched an unnamed detainee. Detainee that you can't remember his name during control and restraint in spring 2017, and he was asked to describe it in his own words. Yes, at the time I was seconded to the Home Office, so I was working sort of Monday to Friday, and I was out of uniform talking to detained guys about the benefits of voluntary return, supporting the Home Office. I'd gone to, I believe it was C Wing, because of the layout of the building, and I was speaking to some of the staff, and there was, I think, the young detained guy. He was being quite loud, a bit abusive to a female member of staff. Scroll up, please, Zainab. And she was beginning to be a little bit feeling threatened, because I think she was quite new. There was also 2 or 3 officers shadowing who were new, standing in the back of the office, and I challenged this young man just to sort of his behaviour about, how you speak to people. And he turned on me, and he went to go and punch me. It was almost like a swipe, clipped my face, so I moved back. Had to take his arm, and I was told at the time not to get involved in control and restraint, because I was obviously in a different role at the time, although I was a badged officer still who was legally allowed to carry out control and restraint. So a spontaneous incident happened. The officers in the wing took control of the detained guy. They both had, one officer on each arm, had him in straight arm locks, which was the arm like that, and another officer took hold of the head, which they did it very well. The guy was, he was angry, he was shouting, he was under control, and I was almost like instructing them what to do next. So someone had called a first response on their radio, and this was a term, Mr. Murphy, you used right at the beginning of your evidence about control and restraint. On the radios, there's like a red button. If you hold it 3 times, it goes to the control room as a first response. So a designated team would be called out to that incident. Control room would say control first response, and the first officer that came in from that first response was DCO Derek Murphy. And the detained guy, had his head facing the wing door, the exit door. There was only one door, and his head was low, about 90 degrees, held about 90 degrees. Derek Murphy came in very low and then uppercut a couple of times. I think 2 or 3 times in the face. And I intervened, and it's very difficult because when you're in a situation where your adrenaline kicks in, you have a tunnel vision, you see directly what's in front of you, you see that incident. Sometimes everything in the peripheral vision can blur. It's just a natural occurrence of adrenaline. But I remember him coming in and I was like, wow, So anyway, the detained guy was taken to CSU, and let me just drop down to line 21. I spoke to Derek Murphy afterwards, said to him what you did. You did that for a start, you did that in front of new staff, and what impression are you going to make? I said, if I ever see or hear of you doing anything like that again, I'll report you. And he said, yeah, I'm sorry, I just lost it. In hindsight, if I'd have reported that, I feel like I should have reported it. Derek Murphy was seen as a bit of a hero. Quite a loud guy, big guy, quite loud, quite dominant with some of the staff, going to be made up to DCM, acting up sometimes, and I remember he was going to be selected as a DCM because he was a dominant DCO. So, and he rounds off by saying he should have reported it. Do you see how he talks about uppercutting? It's his words, not mine, Mr. Murphy, where there are other allegations which I've asked you about, which have you uppercutting a detainee or detainees. What do you say about Mr. Syred's evidence?
I never uppercutted a detainee.
Has he got that completely wrong?
I never uppercutted a detainee. That's my answer.
Well, did you punch this detainee?
I never uppercutted a detainee. That's my answer.
No,
you asked me for an answer.
Right.
That's it.
Well, let's avoid the word uppercut. Did you punch the detainee once or twice in the way that Mr. Syred
I don't
described?
remember the incident, and I would never uppercut another detainee.
Did you say to Mr. Syred, I'm sorry, I just lost it?
I never remember speaking to Mr. Syred because he was very, very seldom on the wings.
Yeah. Well, somebody's got this terribly wrong, haven't they? Either it's you or there's no real grey area here, is there, Mr. Murphy?
To me, it's not a grey area. I did not uppercut a detainee.
Did you think you were a bit of a hero to others?
Absolutely not.
Quite dominant?
No, absolutely not.
No.
If I was quite dominant and a hero, as it was put, why would he come and pull me or I don't know. I'm flabbergasted with that. No.
Well, when you
I never see myself as a hero or dominant.
No. But it's whether others saw you as a hero and dominant, Mr. Murphy.
I can't speak for others.
And so it comes to this, and I'm sure you'll accuse me of putting words in your mouth, but does your evidence mean that Mr. Syred has just made it up?
I did not uppercut a detainee. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I did not uppercut a detainee.
Well, in your second witness statement, in paragraph 48, you said it was completely false.
Well, I did not uppercut a detainee, or uppercut, whatever you call it.
All right. Chair, that's all I want to ask Mr. Murphy. I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Yes, only a few, Mr. Murphy. I realise you've had a long morning with us. You spoke about both in your witness statement. You've also told us today, when you've been giving your evidence, about certain members of staff being used for CNR more frequently. We heard a similar type of evidence from Mr. Pashali last week. He also told us about being allocated to E-Wing more frequently than some other officers were. Can you tell us, was that your experience as well? Did you work on E-Wing often?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Do you have a view on why that was, why you were allocated to E-Wing?
I don't know. I don't know. We shouldn't have been, because we were, if we were using CNR and then you had to try and de-escalate the detainee, so we should never have been put in that position. So I don't know why.
Can you tell me a bit more about that? Do you mean that you were using
If we had to use control and restraint on a detainee, and he ended up in CSU, and then we were allocated to E-Wing and CSU, it's all part of the one block, we would have to manage the whole wing, and it would mean us coming into the detainee that we used the CNR on. And he would be upset, they were well within their rights to be upset with us, because we were after using control and restraint them to get them into the CSU. So we should never have been put in that position in the first place. And we were just constantly put in the firing line, which is totally wrong. Sorry, that's it.
No, that's helpful. Thank you very much. You also mentioned the lack of being able to take a break after you'd used force on somebody,
That's correct,
being
yeah.
told, man up, write up your paperwork. Do you have any recollections of having what might be called a debrief with a senior member of staff?
If you had a planned intervention, you'd go back, like if there was a chartered flights and we'd be brought in to put detainees on present them to the escorts, we would be given a briefing at the start, that everyone would be on video and you'd name and everything, and then afterwards, quick debrief, any injuries, no injuries, okay, off you go. And as oftentimes we get back to the kit room, and all of a sudden, the guys stay in their kit, we go back again. This happened on numerous occasions, and we'd say, look, can we have a break, a cup of tea, or just sit down, because there's often times I would go physically sick after a scene, or because I'd be scared, you'd be anxious, your adrenaline would be pumping, and then we'd have to go and write a report. And that's all it seemed, it was just, and excuse me for saying this, this just seemed odd. We need to cover our ass, so get the report done.
When you say that I just want to check that I've understood what you're saying correctly. When you say that you would kind of go, you'd still be in your kit, but then you would get deployed to another use of force before you'd taken your kit off?
On many occasions, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. While you were working on E-Wing and the CSU, that one kind of part of the building, was there one senior manager who was allocated to overseeing that area, or did that change?
Yeah, it changed. It changed. It depends on who's in shift.
Okay.
It changed, yeah. And depends on how many DCMs were on shift. 9 times out of 10, you might get one DCM that have to look after all the wings, because someone called in sick or something. You might just have 2.
So you wouldn't have one named senior manager who had responsibility for that part of Brookhouse?
Not to my recollection, no.
Okay, and one final question, and then we'll let you go and get some lunch. Do you recall seeing Home Office staff on E-Wing and CSU?
They'd have to come every day to do another quick flit around the rooms, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are all the questions I have.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it is not an easy experience given evidence.
I apologise for some of my language and everything.
No, I'm glad that you've spoken freely, and I want to reassure you that I've listened to everything that you've said very carefully.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair, we're a little late to rise. Shall we say 2:10?
We shall. Thank you very much. See you at 10 past 2. And thank you, Mr. Murphy. Thank you.